Good evening and welcome to the September 26th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call the meeting to order. This is a kind of a special meeting because this is one of the fun things that we get to do. This is the culmination of the summer reading program, and this is, I'd like to hand it over to our city librarian, Tamara LeBeau, and she'll talk a little about the program.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. Tonight I'm very pleased to be here to present you the super readers for the library's 2016 summer reading program. This year we had over 2,000 children who participated in our program. 810 of these children completed the program to become super readers. And part of their reward, of course, for being a super reader is to come here and meet all of you. They're very excited about it. But before we get started, I am going to thank a few of our sponsors whose help made the summer reading program possible. So a big thank you to Ross McDonald Company, Foster's Freeze, Granada Bowl, In Mind Designs Art Studio, Tri-Valley Ice, performer Nancy Cassidy, LARPD, and the Friends of the Livermore Library. So with that, if you want to go ahead and come down, we can get started.
Okay, and just to make the note that all these city council members are present and accounted for, except for Councilmember Spadovsky, who is excused. So let's go meet the super readers.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go in alphabetical order once we get settled in here. Okay, our first reader is Sierra Abersold. Ella Aby. Go ahead. Olivia Aby. Dylan Acosta. Isaac Aguilar. Malia Aguilar. Malia, is that it? Shripad Rahir. Sana Amar. Zoe Alcaz. Chloe Alvis. Jackson Alvis. Alexis Amaral. Anna Parani Amarnoth. Sonia Amiri. Dominic Anderson. Zenon Andrews. Austin Anthony. Megan Anthony. Riley Anwell. And Timothy Anwell. Valeria Erzmendi. Jaylee Atterbury. Bugalachi Keen Adibu. Chimdiuso Adibu. Rita Aswathi. Eliana Bantolino. Caden Baruz. Dana Beardsley. Josie Beardsley. Bridget Belfield. Dylan Bell. Caitlin Bordeaux. Fraser Bissett. Jake Blake. Noah Blake. I see your badge. Jake Blaschuk. Jasmine Blaschuk. Nicholas Blaschuk. Colin Bond. Isabel Bond. Lauren Bond.
Oh, calling me, I brought another.
What?
That's separate.
Oh, okay. Audrey Boyd. Evan Brendlin. Sade Bumpus. Soren Bumpus. I need to see who you are. Tai Bumpus. Ethan Bush. Jessica Berger. Kaylin Carter. Ava Cardisano. Olivia Kasha. Kasha. Alexis Cohen. Taylor Conover. Kennedy Coley. Alejandra Cordova Hernandez. Alondra Cordova Hernandez, correct? All right. Kyle Kroos. Daniel Crossit. Ethan Crossit. Let's wait a minute. Okay, Colton Crouch. Trevor Crouch. Isabella Cruz. Victor Curtis. Kimber Dow. Abby Darling. Alexis Day. Just a minute. Danica Day. Emily Davis. Debus? Debus. Emily Debus. Nathan Dempsey. Sean Dempsey. Samir Donvantari. Allison DeVita. Is your number? Cable Dodapaneni. All right. Kosho Dodapaneni. Riley Doko. And Ryan Doko. Nadia Durbinski. Alan Druin. Harry Dunn. Jack Eaton. Let's hold up just a sec. Lauren Eaton. Christina Ellis. Zachary Emmerich. Bashoy Ishak. Demiana Ishak. Addie Estrada. Gally Feigenbaum. Yoav Feigenbaum. Keegan Falcon Smith. Jamison Foster. Brooklyn Fowler. Trent Francisco. Cole Gable. Layla Gallo. Natasha Garut. Henry Gillette. Is it Rayner? Rayner, okay. Rayner Gillette. Coco Justino. Layla Justino. Maggie Gleason. Jackson Glogovac. Cruz Godoy. Isabel Garasp. Elise Gallart. Andre Gran. Kylie Grandov. What's the number? Savannah Guy. Brooke Harper. Addison Hart. Avery Hasey. Can I see your number? Spencer Haugen. Shuan Ha. Is that wrong? Hey? Jared Henry. Brittany Hernandez. And Carlos Hernandez. Can I see your name tag? Oslin Holt. Sveta Halunga. Madison Holmes. Melanie Holm. Is it Elisa or Alyssa? Alyssa Hoyt. Austin Jang. Gabriel Jang. Number. Tejas Hara. Dylan Kendall. Shayna Kendall. Tyler Cardy. Okay. Pamir Kaviani. Let me see your name. Ava Kerr. Sarah Kahn. Dylan Kinsella. Reagan Kinsella. Can I see the number? Excellent. Okay, cool. Let's wait for a moment. Georgia Kirk. And Leah Kirk. Jadix Knight. Jadix Knight. Abby Coe. Nathan Coe. Eden Koklar. Eleanor Kraft. Izzy Kuntz. Tyler Lahow. Courtney Lawrence. Thank you. I'm just gonna wait. Mandy Lawrence. Remember? You have a lot of medals. Christina Lee. Emery Lentz. Ethan Lewis. Chloe Lim. Jordan Lim. Anna Lim. Sally Lim. Casey Liu. Avery Lockhart. Joey Lopez Dunn. Mac? Callan Mack. Jordan Martin. Connor Mathis. And Quinn Mathis. Ashley McMichael. Caitlin McNeil. Cora Mayland. Sebastian Mena. Can I see the badge? Anaya Menon. Alexis Marita. Annabelle Myers. And Ethan Myers. Sophia Miller. Tobin Miller. Sally Mills. Can I see the name tag? Brianna Milochek. Ziad Mohammed. Jacqueline Morris. Amelia Mueller. Charlie Mueller. Jennifer Munoz. Lily Mesto. Can I see your number? 30. Zachary Nalick. Nikita Nazarov. Nazarov, is that right? Can I see the number? Nikolai Nazarov. Stella Neal. Brendan O'Hara. Emily O'Hara. Martin Olson. Emma Opet. Jessica Owens. Jacob Padilla. Is it Pake? Abigail Pake. Aisha Parwez. Is that right? No? How do you see it? Aisha Parwez. Closer? Samaya Parwez. Close? Penny Pascal. Ayane Patanayak. Is that close? Samantha Payne. Is it Pert? Lucas Peart. Ryan Peart. Alexander Pepper. Evangeline Pepper. Lorenzo Perez. Macy Perez. 75. Joynell Perry. Laura Phillips. Liam Pitt. Sarah Pogue. Monty Pryor. I see the number. Gabriel Rands. Madeline Raskin. Amelia Reardon. Karina Reardon. Archer Rice. Rudy Roa. Victoria Roa. Andrew Robles. Brittany Robles. Aiden Rocha. Photo op. Gisela Rodriguez. Mariela Rodriguez. Anthony Romagna. Amelia Romagna. Alicia, is it Sablin? Seblin. Sablon? Third time's the charm. Mallory Sedora. Amira Sane. Sane? Joseph Sane. Grace Santos. Donovan Segura. Marisa Segura. Dorian Selway. Jade Selway. Fiona Shen. Miley Silva. Megan Silva. Sean Silva. I see your number. McKenna Slavic. Madeline Soto. Shelby Sousa. Emma Spencer. Elijah Stewart. Rhiannon Stewart. Is that right? Okay. I see your number. Wait for him to get caught up a minute. I haven't announced her yet, though. Okay, Madison Stout. Gabriel Angelo Serbin. Finley Scythe. Justin Thomas. Eleanor Thornberry. Francis Thornberry Sherrod. Sean Tran. Amanda Toomey. Is that right? Toomey? Silas Twist. Misha Uberoy. Zachary Velez. Sierra Vidnovic. Emerson Visaya. Is that close? Sahib Walia. Jesseline Walia. Connor Worley. Michaela Whetstone. Kaylee Williams. Can I see your name tag? Richard Williams Rakestraw. Avery Witherspoon. Braden Witherspoon. Jolie Wolf. Amelia Woodstock. Ella Worley. I read Ella Worley, right? Okay. Madhuri Zaveri, is that right? Madhuri. Okay, excellent. Go ahead. Wasim Sayed. Zaid. Easier than I was making it, huh? Delaney Gordon. Is it Angel or Angel? Angel Arroyo. Okay, Noah Miller. And Natalie Miller. Okay, is that everybody? Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of our list. So thank you, Mayor Marchand and council members, for helping us to congratulate our 2016 Summer Super Readers.
Good evening and welcome back to the September 26th meeting of the Livermore City Council. We just finished up with our summer library reading program, where I think we had something like 600 or 700 kids that we congratulated. So that's some of the fun stuff we get to do. Those are our super readers. And with that, I would ask that we'll do a quick roll call and note that the Councilmember Spadowski is not here, but he is excused. And that I would now ask that you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one
Okay, moving on to the Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda, and these can, the City Council can neither discuss nor deliberate on any of these items, although they may be brought up for consideration at a later meeting. So with that, I've got about 10 cards here. Ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We have Scott Kennison, Lynn Seppala, Kathy Streeter.
I don't think I ever get to go first.
Your turn.
Yeah, thank you. Mayor Marchand, council members, and staff, on September 10th, our community celebrated and supported the arts in Livermore with brilliance at the Bankhead. It was a great night with glorious food and wine from Wente, music on the plaza provided by our own East Bay Jazz All-Stars, a performance by the legendary Judy Collins accompanied by our own Livermore Amador Symphony, and they were amazing. The usual silent auction, raffle, fun and eat, and an unusually exciting live auction. At the end of the night, we had raised more money than any fundraising event before for LVPAC. It was Livermore at its best. Sorry you weren't there. It was a great night, but we live our mission every day. The people who work at the Bankhead and the Bothwell strive to provide access to the arts for all of our community. Beyond supporting our resident companies and putting together a great presenting season, here are some of the things that we have done to engage the community this year. We hired an education manager in April. We started and continue the East Bay Jazz All-Stars program for gifted musicians from the Tri-Valley and beyond who participated this summer in the San Jose Jazz Festival. We had a Rangoli art project in front of the Bankhead and had 2 workshops with Smith Elementary School. We hosted a Cinco de Mayo celebration on the plaza with middle school mariachi band, folklorico dancers, crafts, and food. We celebrated National Yoga Day. I was not a participant on the plaza, unfortunately. We presented Evenings on the Green, 10 free concerts on the Bankhead Plaza. We welcomed 2 startup businesses to use our lobby, Livermore Wine Trolley and Story Coffee. We provided financial support with LVEF for the So Wise, So Young program to help Livermore Shakes bring the Bard to 2nd grade students. We hosted a free interactive performance workshop for students with Colombian band Cimarron. We had a full offering of summer camps, including Adventures in Writing at the Bothwell, and introduced young people to the wonders of art and creative writing, and we funded scholarships to make those programs accessible to all. We commissioned a community art project and installed 2 incredible mobiles in the lobby of the Bankhead Theater. We continue to have the lobby open as a visitor center and every month host an event and welcome the community. This past Friday, we celebrated Native American Day with a teepee, Indian dance, and interactive arts projects. On October 14th, we'll be hosting a master class on Gaelic music for 10 students with Julie Fowlis, featured in the Disney film Brave. And this is all done with no taxpayer dollars. Of course, the citizens of Livermore can easily be led to believe that Livermore Valley Performing Arts Center gets taxpayer dollars because they look at Pleasanton, Tracy, San Ramon, Walnut Creek, and many other communities across the country who fund the arts either directly through the city or through their parks department, and they think that must be what happens here in Livermore. But we all know that that would be wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Lynn Seppala, Kathy Streeter, Nancy Mulligan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lynn Seppala, a resident of this valley for 40 years and a Livermore business owner for 35 years. I speak for no organization of which I am a member. Today I note that the city is starting to spend money marking with spray paint the location of underground utilities around the old library near the Civic Center, usually a sign of impending construction. As you know, many art groups were given permission to store a significant quantity of possession in the old library. I was not aware of a vote to proceed with the new city council chamber. I only remember that a study of the project was approved. What does this mean for the construction? A project that is estimated to cost $5 million, dollars that could be spent enhancing the downtown project. Thank you. And I'm off to another meeting. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Seppala. Kathy Streeter, Nancy Mulligan, Lori Souza.
Feels like it's been forever since I've been here, and it hasn't been. But
You've been
anyway,
to Ashland since, so it's that time shift.
yeah, there you go. Okay, Kathy Streeter, Livermore, since 1964. We've lived here since then, and Livermore has changed a lot since then. There wasn't much here in 1964, but that has changed. Livermore is a great place to live because over the years we have had lots of people who are willing to give of their time and talents to work with city staff and to lead us toward the city we live in today. Friends of Livermore, a group recently identified as a political action committee, is made up of people who believe they know best what downtown should be. They have not listened to the testimony of citizens at the public events designed to gather information from our citizens. Instead, they design their own plans, apparently funded by our own local 1%. And when the plans are not financially feasible or consistent with community input, they say their plan is better and it can be built with what they call, quote, creative financing. As a retired banker, creative financing makes me think of 2008. Now, Friends of Livermore, in order to support their vision, are backing candidates in order to flip the council. That's their term, not mine. They have convinced at least one candidate to run at the very last minute and even collected the necessary signatures for him. It was so rushed he didn't even attend the city's candidate information session, which I thought was mandatory. We have a mayor who has won the hearts of the community by always putting what is best for Livermore first, and who even goes around cleaning up graffiti himself and encourages others to do the same. Saw the article in the paper. I work with Stu Gary, a man who has served this community in many roles. We both served on the School Bond Oversight Committee. He is dedicated and thoughtful and smart and is a real asset to our council. I didn't know Lorene Turner when she was elected, but she's turned out to be a hardworking and insightful council member who always asks the hard questions and has a knack for getting to the heart of issues. I feel it would be harmful to Livermore's future to replace Stu and Lorene, who are intimately knowledgeable concerning the complicated issues surrounding our contemplated downtown development, with untested one-issue candidates. I support Stu and Lorene, and in the name of full disclosure, I serve as Mayor Marchand's treasurer. These folks work hard to serve this community, and we need them on our city council, especially now. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Mulligan, Lori Souza, Connie Copps.
I'm Nancy Mulligan. I live at 722 Swallow Drive, Livermore. Mayor, City Council, and staff. Anna Sigg, 567 South L Street, Livermore, is unable to attend the meeting this evening. I'm going to speak for her and for myself. Recently, Anna learned that a correct quote in a newspaper some time back was misunderstood as her being in agreement with moving the Southern Pacific Depot away from its original site. This is untrue, and she wants you and others to know that her vote is to have the depot stay where it is. In speaking with others lately, Anna has heard little agreement for moving the depot. She knows a lot of people spent time working on this project. She respects their work and intentions. She just wants the depot to have another chance to stay on site. Over 40 years ago, Southern Pacific Land Development Company thought the depot had to move in order for them to build a shopping center. Amazingly, they managed well with the depot where it is. It is Anna's and my belief that a development company can manage it well again. Please consider again the need to move the Southern Pacific Depot away from its original site. Please keep it as an important part of the downtown development. It is indeed the most iconic historical building in all of Livermore, since having the depot was the impetus for founding the town and also the reason the Livermore Heritage Guild was formed. Please give our treasured depot a chance to remain on its historic site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. Lori Souza, Connie Copps, Donna Kerger.
Well, good evening, Mayor Marchand, City Council, and City staff. I live at 2318 Pendolino Lane in Livermore, and I'm representing the residents in the Sevillano housing development there tonight. We're struggling with a lack of maintenance on parcel 99682-6. This parcel is directly at the intersection of Ascalano and Mission, so everyone entering our neighborhood sees it as they enter. It used to be a vineyard. So we're most concerned about the safety aspect of the vineyard's current condition because the vines are dying for lack of irrigation and the weeds continue to grow. I've been working with the city staff to explore a resolution, and I'm very appreciative of the help I'm getting from Andy Ross and Paul Spence. They report that the fire department does not view this as a significant fire hazard. In addition, community development staff have concluded that this is agricultural land and open space consistent with the zoning and the South Livermore Valley specific plan. The property is owned by the Hansen family, and many of us in the neighborhood have spoken directly with Rick Hansen in seeking a remedy. He's very cordial and even sympathetic, but the condition remains the same. Many of the residents are concerned about the impact of this eyesore on the property values. So I'll continue to work with my neighbors and the Hansens in hope of reaching a suitable solution. But I think the original architects of the South Livermore Valley specific plan were visionary, and the plan has served the entire Tri-Valley very well. With the implementation of all plans, I think it's important to assess their effectiveness in meeting the original objectives and refine the plan as needed. I understand that there are other parcels of land in other neighborhoods in similar condition to the Hansens' property that I referred to. These are unintended consequences of the South Livermore Valley specific plan. So with all that said, I'm here to respectfully suggest that it's time to assess the South Livermore Valley specific plan's effectiveness and consider some refinements. Our personal time is our most valuable asset, and I'm certainly willing to volunteer some of my own time in helping with this assessment and refinement should the opportunity arise. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Souza. Connie Copps, Donna Kurger, Dave McGuigan.
Hi, I'm Connie Copps at 1422 Tulip Way in Springtown area. Over the years, I've been asking for vital information to make decent contributions to the conversations regarding the future going forward with the Springtown area. I believe that both my homeowners association and city planners have not been upfront with vital information for those decisions to be made wisely. I can't find the word. Sorry, I might fill that in later. I read in the Independent a while back ago, and a board member of our HOA was encouraging everybody to go downtown for the downtown meeting. I was down there. A couple of my neighbors were down there. I left early on my way home. Our HOA board is meeting about how they're going to dissolve our assets with the city. None of our homeowners knew about this. I was the only person to walk into that meeting. There were no other homeowners there. Recently, I also read in the Independent that the Park District, voted to, go ahead and hire a consultant to decide what to do with the golf course. Now, Beth Wilson recused herself from that decision, but the prior meeting, she was the one who made the motion to partner with the city to decide what to do with Springtown. John Lawrence is quoted as saying that the city, or I guess David first brought up that there were boundaries that, need to be discussed between, where the golf course ends and the other lands begin, because the lines were kind of blurred. And David first respectfully brought up the boundaries according to this article I read, and I believe his name is John Lawrence. He said that we do not have to worry about the property lines, and I'm hoping I'm not misquoting him. If I am, I apologize. But it was in the Independent that the city was going to discuss this later. Now, 4 weeks ago, my HOA president was out with plumbers. They were marking off all kinds of land by the duck pond, the water, and recently they said that we shared a meter with the city, a water meter, that the city owned it at our last meeting. It was also brought up by that same person who, at the other meeting, was deciding what to do with our assets. Bottom line, I think there's a handful of people from our city and a handful of boys from our homeowners association who are acting on behalf of themselves and not our community. Bottom line is, I expect that you share the facts before you move forward in any way, shape, or form with my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Donna Kurger, Dave McGuigan, John Stein.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. My name is Donna Kurger, and I'm on the board of directors for the Valley Children's Museum that is soon to be built in the city of Dublin. I'm here tonight to request that staff put our museum on a future agenda so we can make a presentation on the museum and the benefits for, it's a Tri-Valley project. It's not, even though it's being housed in Dublin, it certainly is a regional project. And I am going around to all of the city councils in the Tri-Valley explaining exactly what our project is. Currently, it's going to be a 25,000 square foot building. And I think it's important for you to see what the vision of this museum is, and more importantly, not only how it benefits the city of Livermore, but we've been working really diligently and consistently with all of the school districts in the Tri-Valley, because we have a school program for the California missions. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And again, I think I gave all of the information on who I am and my email, but I certainly would appreciate an opportunity in the near future for us to come before you. And just I absolutely love your city. Even though I'm a resident of San Ramon, and we do have a performing arts, I have to tell you, I go to at least half of them at the Bankhead. They do such a marvelous job, and it is such a wonderful place for culture, and more importantly, the staff that you have there is amazing. So I just want to say thank you for continuing that cultural effort and spreading it out throughout the valley. I really do appreciate it. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Kurger. Dave McGuigan, John Stein.
Dave McGuigan, Ontario Drive. Okay, let me briefly recap. You may have your questions over the professional opinion of the officer or whether he accidentally made false testimony. But when he's in his cruiser doing paperwork with my signed statement in his hand and he testifies that he has yet to talk to me, it's deliberate perjury. All right, now let's talk about witness statements, or more specifically, the lack of documented witness statements. There were two independent witnesses to the accident, but one didn't see anything, so I'm going to talk in the singular about the statements of the one witness that saw everything. The summary of his statement took 2 paragraphs in the police report, but they decided to deliberately not document the only independent witness to a felony prosecution. Once you realize that the witness would have nothing to remind him of his testimony and their memory would fade over with the passage of time, one has to wonder why the police deliberately decided to not preserve the evidence. Well, this could be an example of the well-known practice of the Livermore police of ignoring witnesses that would contradict the charges they are bringing, but I don't think that's the case for 2 reasons. One, in those cases, they never mention the witness, so the defendant has no means to track them down, but the witness statements were summarized. Second, I know the officer didn't develop his intention to lie until after 1545, and since the statement would have been taken before that time, when he was actually acting honestly, I believe he did document the statement. Okay, so where is it? Let me speculate. If you think back to my statement where he came back at a later time with a different pen to annotate the time, when I first saw it, I thought he wrote that back at the station when he was crafting his story. But when I heard the audio logs that were withheld, I realized that he was in his cruiser doing paperwork at 1540, so the statement was actually written at 1540, some 15 minutes after I signed it. Okay, if he's filling in paperwork of my statement, he's going to be doing the same with the other witness statements, and it too would have said it was concluded at or about 1540. Of course, you can't sell the lie that you're talking to me when there are multiple statements that concluding at 1540. Of course, if the other witness statement happens to accidentally fall into the trash can, you're left with just the summaries and a plausible lie. I'll leave you with two rhetorical questions now. How does a case without witness statements documented make it past the internal review? And is anyone else curious of whether the witness remembers signing a statement that day? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wiggin. And finally, John Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. At the last meeting, you discussed the development around the priority development area on Isabel. The impression that was given was that the 4,000 plus or minus housing units are necessary and sufficient for bringing heavy rail BART to Livermore. It's basically part of the one plan Bay Area. And the question is, what other steps are needed? First of all, BART has to decide what type of service they want to provide here, buses, light rail, heavy rail. And right now their plate is pretty full. They've got station upgrades, signalization upgrades, extension to San Jose. And apparently, if the newspapers are correct, they're severely understaffed. They only have about 60% of the staff they really need. And while, contractors can do a lot, they do have to be supervised. There's also funding. The last estimate was $1.2 billion, of which $400 million eventually will be collected through BB, and people say there's another $200 million, but that still leaves a deficit of $600 million, which will have to probably come from the federal government. And that's unlikely if it's a Republican Congress, since they tend to, while they want more infrastructure, tend to focus on states that have Republican governors and not Democratic states. Then there's ridership. 80% of the ridership typically at an end of the line station comes from commuters, 80+%. And it doesn't appear that the parking is adequate to create more than about 3,000 riders from that. There's also the question of congestion relief on 580, which is probably the critical factor. At some point, the MTC will decide this is a necessity, BART out to probably Greenville, when 580 becomes totally clogged and the workers for the businesses that are located in the South Bay, Oakland, and San Francisco cannot reach their jobs, and the trucks that deliver goods to the Port of Oakland can't make it in a reasonable amount of time. But the current plan seems to actually increase the number of cars on 580, since you pull 3,000 cars off for parking, but you probably add 4,000 from people from the new development commuting into the Central Bay. There's also the question of timing. I'm sure MTC will want the building to occur as soon as possible, and possibly before the BART is guaranteed. So I would urge that the trigger point be start of construction on BART and not sooner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. That's all the cards I have. Just a refinement. At the meeting where we discussed the Isabel transit-oriented development plan, I believe that we were very clear that the trigger would be the assurance that BART was going to be coming out. Is that correct?
Yes, and you actually instructed us to put that into the documents for your consideration once the draft documents return to you.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Also, a couple of points. The comment from Mr. Kennison that we weren't there at the gala. I'd like to point out that in the time that the bank has been open, I have not missed a gala or a clam bake. So I have been a longtime supporter and continue to support the arts here in Livermore. So just to make that clear. Also, at the last meeting, the chair of LVPAC made some statements during the Citizens Forum that could easily be misconstrued by some folks. She said that our facility here was only used by council and planning commission meetings 4 times a month. And that is correct. This technically it's correct because the council meets twice a month and so does the planning commission. However, that is not the only time this building is used. This building is used about 80% of the time. It's scheduled. In addition to council meetings and planning commission meetings, we have the Key to the City program, Youth in Government. We have the Citizens Police Academy, the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. We've even had a barbershop chorus use this facility, so we use it a great deal. It's Neighborhood Watch, department meetings, technical certification training, hiring functions, and the block captains, neighborhood group meetings. So we use it a great deal. So to say that it's only used 4 times a month by these two boards and the council, yeah, but it's actually, as I mentioned, it's scheduled about 80% of the time, so that we get a great deal of use out of this building. So I want to make sure that's very clear that this triple-wide trailer is used a lot. And unfortunately, at the last program that we had, most of the people in the audience couldn't see the great computer projections that we had because they couldn't see the screen. So when we've had it off-site, we've had problems with the audio-visual. So this is an inadequate building, but it's used a great deal. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this isn't a seldom-used building. And as a comparison, members of the Livermore Valley Performing Arts Center are now focusing on a 299-seat theater in the downtown next door to the Bankhead. And I checked the PKF study again, and according to the PKF study, they estimate that will only be used 35 times a year, which is about 3 times a month. So you can consider the use of the buildings. This building's used a lot more than a 299-seat theater next to the Bankhead. So with that, thank you very much. Moving on to the consent calendar. Is there any cards for the consent? Okay. Okay, does anybody wish to pull an item for consent?
403.
Oh, pardon me? 403?
And 405 just for comment.
Councilmember Warner? Anything? Okay. Okay, we have... Okay, let's see. Let's go with the council first. Okay, so 4.03.
Just 2 comments on 4.03. First off, great job, and things are looking really nice out there on the, I don't know what we call it, Springtown Open Space Park. And first off, if it is, I don't know if we can include it in this or some other time, and if it's cost effective or anything, if there's any way we can get some doggy cleanup bags out there, that would be fantastic. And secondly, I noticed that you included or added to the ordinance the provisions of feeding ducks and geese. And though I understand why you want to do that, I'd like some rationale as to why now. I've been out there. I know what it looks like. People have been feeding ducks there for 40 years. And, you know, I will admit my daughter, when she was little, fed the ducks at the pond and probably contributed to the problem. And I understand the problem, but why now? Why do we want, because I hate to see a family go to the duck pond and throw some bread in there and then get a $100 ticket. I understand wanting that enforceability so that we can solve the problem, but really just why now?
Basically because nothing else we've tried has worked, and because we are establishing an ordinance for that area, it seemed like a time to give some more teeth, that if we wanted to ever tackle the issue, we could. Frankly, we have signs up there that are very explicit with photos of the disease you're causing to those animals by feeding them, and it still doesn't seem to help. Even when staff is out there looking very official, people still feed them right in front of us. So it's really just opportunity to adopt an ordinance right now, and we figured if we're putting together rules and some enforceability, now was a good time to add it. Also, with the change from the golf course, not being there anymore, staff's looking at plans for what we could do with that area, independent of the master plan, of is there anything we can do to make the pond a little more functional? And right now, with the amount of waste going into it, I think nothing we do is going to help just because there's too much food going into the system and waste.
I can support it as long as we don't rush out to ticket people. And also, I'm wondering if you could reach out to our friends at LARPD and see if maybe a ranger or somebody can come out there and do some community education. If we can station somebody out there, if that's possible, to really do some in-services on the hazards to the animals with the community, maybe on the weekends or something. If that's a possible thing, I think that might be an interesting way to address the situation through education.
Yeah, we can definitely look at it. I can't commit LARPD, but we
exactly. We can
surely
at least
ask.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And if you could look into the pooch disposal, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, 4.05.
I just wanted to pull 4.05 to express on behalf of the council our public appreciation to Livermore Downtown Inc. So our grant to them to promote and have the hospitality events in the downtown is on the consent calendar, and I think many members of the public probably at home think, oh, all those great downtown events the city does, the taxpayers do. No, we don't. The business owners raise money, assess fees for those events, and it's largely a self-supporting operation, and we give them a small grant to assist with the 4th of July fireworks, the Christmas parade, and certain broad community benefits. But without the business owners themselves having a downtown association to promote their businesses and the livelihood in what I've frequently called Livermore's front yard, our front porch, our downtown. So I just wanted to say on the record, on behalf of all 5 of us, thank you, LDI, and your members for what you've, for years now, contributed to the downtown health of Livermore. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We do have 2 cards, County Cops 4.02, 4.03, and 4.09, and then John Stein 4.02.
Okay, I'm going to skip the 4.02. I thought it was 4.01, 4.03, and then 4.09. Again, my concerns really are the Springtown area. The duck pond is green, but a couple weeks ago, the lines were cut. The lines were cut that gave water to like the back of our other building, and water was cut. Now, when the plumbers were coming through that area, and I took pictures as they were going through, we had wires going under where it said water, under the pipes. They were coming from across the other side of Bluebell. And with the Springtown open space, those signs were up before you voted on them. There's like just a ton of rules that you expect people to follow, and I think that's great because, we do need rules. I know it's a complicated situation, but it's also been a land grab in the past. There's been a lot of want to develop that area, and I sort of think that, like, if you're going to put it to a vote, that area is going to be open space. Okay, you need a certain amount of space to build, to do your infill projects in certain areas too. It's really important, that you determine like what land is Springtown, what land was Springtown, and what you're really supposed to be, how you're supposed to be handling that land. There's so much corruption going on right now with that area, and there doesn't have to be. The way that Springtown has been dealt with, it's like just sneak it through in the middle of the night and it's wrong. I hope that you watched that video because that was a public meeting, the one that one of the ones that Darren Greenwood had at the Elks Club. There were 2 meetings back to back that night, and one was not televised. I did tape those meetings. I do think they're important. I think it's really important that voices are not squashed as we move forward with Springtown. I feel, at the last Homeowners Association meeting I was at, I was told that, they did split the water, and they said, our expenses are going to be a little higher now. We're going to have to handle this because, the city was paying for certain things along the way. So I went, and they said water and sewer. Well, our community paid $14,000 for water, and I really think that this whole situation needs to be audited. According to, I've got homeowners board members that tell you two different things. Our kilns, we had 2 ceramic kilns and molds that just poof disappeared. Well, they told us that they were donated and they gave the organization, and that's being investigated. Well, one said they were ours, another said they weren't ours. There's just too much corruption, and it needs to be addressed. If you really want Springtown to happen, do it with integrity, do it with honesty. It can be done with integrity, and it can be done with honesty. Thank you.
John Stein, 4.02.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. In regard to the Pleasant View Lane annexation, when the city annexed the College Avenue annexation, they bonded for the work, which allowed the property owners to either defer or pay in installments for the improvements. I think that might be a worthwhile option for the Pleasant View Lane annexation, in that they could, buy in when their current septic tank fails or when they sell the property. If you bond, and they would obviously have to pay the interest, but it would be a lot cheaper than taking out a home equity loan to pay for it immediately. Also, I would urge everyone to vote for FF, the proposition that permanently protects the open space that was the Springtown Golf Course. Usable open space within the city limits is a critical need for the community as we do infill, and this is an opportunity to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Staff care to address the idea of potentially possibly bonding against that? I think we talked about that last time we were here.
You did indeed. In fact, the residents themselves will be actually holding a vote on whether they wish to have an assessment district, which indeed is bonding. So it's taking a 30-year assessment and bringing the money forward to be able to do the improvements, and these are the public improvements necessary, the sewer main and the laterals out of the right-of-way, as well as the necessary improvements there. You're also aware that there's other funding sources that we brought to bear on this. So essentially, it's the cost of the sewer main and the laterals being brought to the property line, which are a part of the assessment district. So indeed, that's a great idea that you guys have already approved.
And the county put up money as well. So
indeed, we're very pleased by that.
And regarding the comments about corruption and running the Springtown thing through the middle of the night and being secretive, I've personally been involved in the hearings on this for, I think, over 8 years now. And we've worked at this a number of times. So this has been a very open process, and we've taken a lot of public comment. So I'm very comfortable with the way this went. And if you are still concerned about the disposition of the land, as Mr. Stein mentioned, this will be on the ballot. So the homeowners will have the opportunity to vote this as permanent open space. So those are the comment cards. Do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Second.
No, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Second by Councilmember Turner. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passed unanimously.
I thought that was the most quiet move I'd ever heard, but I was going.
Yeah, well, we're just running through. So, okay, public hearings. We've got consideration for the formation and establishing a landscape maintenance district, Ponderosa Homes, southwest corner of East Avenue and South Basco. It's going to be 92.
The number of the district?
Yeah, this is the 92nd landscape maintenance district I think we've got now.
It could
Works
be.
for me.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Bob Vinn, Assistant City Engineer. Tonight's item is to consider forming a landscape maintenance district for tract 8195, that's the Vines, which is a 49-lot single-family residential project located at the intersection of East Avenue and Vasco Road. So tonight, staff is recommending that the council open a public hearing, take public comment, close the public hearing, direct the city clerk to open the ballots and announce the results. And if the election is successful, we recommend you adopt a resolution ordering the establishment of the district, adopting the engineer's report, and confirming the levy of the first year's assessment and directing action with respect hereto. That concludes my presentation. Staff's available for questions.
Thanks, Javin. Any questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. I have no cards, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Although, just a question. There's a much venerated rose bush on this site, and it was moved, I understand. And once the construction is done, it's coming back, and this will be included in the landscape maintenance district. The rose bush.
The landscape maintenance district covers landscaping and associated hardscape within the backing lot treatment along Vasco Road and East Avenue. I'm not actually sure where that rose is going to be replanted.
It's going to be, I think, right by the barrel.
Right. It's proposed to be located at the corner near the barrel, and as such would be maintained through the LMD.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Okay. So with that, I'm closing the public hearing and ask the city clerk to tally the ballots. The suspense.
I've counted the ballot, and I have come up with, I have one vote approving the assessment.
Did they fill out the back this time?
And it is signed.
Oh, good. Okay, very good. Okay, so the ballot does pass. It's an affirmative.
Yes.
And with that, do we have a motion? Okay, moved by Councilmember Warner.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Gary. Any discussion on the motion? And this is for staff recommendation. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Great. Thank you very much. Next, 5.02, hearing to consider the CAPER, the Consolidated Annual Performance Report for the Community Development Block Grants. It always amazes me how much you do with the CAPER, and I certainly appreciate that. And we have Jean Frazier and Ty Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. I'm Ty Robinson, Human Services Specialist, and I would like to take this time to thank you for holding this public hearing on the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report known as the CAPER. Since 1985, the city has received an annual federal community development block grant and home investment partnership funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. These programs are more commonly known as the CDBG and home programs. A condition of the city continue to receive CDBG and home funding requires that the city do four things. One, hold a public hearing, inform the citizens of Livermore how the city appropriated the federal funding received. Two, identify the accomplishments that were achieved by the funded agencies and to solicit feedback on those activities and accomplishments. Three, to identify how the city leveraged the CDBG and home entitlement funds with non-federal funding sources. And four, finally, to submit an annual CAPER report to HUD. In fiscal year 15-16, the city leveraged $480,000 of CDBG and home entitlement funds with $800,000 of local funding. Council awarded 18 community-based organizations funding to implement 26 programs that served over 8,000 low-income Livermore residents. Program activities covered a wide range of services for seniors and disabled persons, families, and youth, the homeless, and homeowners in need of home repairs. Thank you. This concludes my remarks. If you have any questions, you're available.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, I'm going to, in that case, open the public hearing. And there's no comments. Closing the public hearing. We received the report. That's it? Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. You did a tremendous amount of work, and this certainly appreciate the way that you can put those funds to good use. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mayor Marchand, there actually is a resolution associated with this agenda item.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
I was still on the item. I hadn't gone back to the. Okay, is a resolution. Okay, so moved.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilmember Warner. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, matters for consideration. 6.01. This is the Alameda County Housing Bond presentation. Linda Gardner, Alameda County Director of Housing and Community Development. Hey, moving on up. You must rate.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm here before you tonight regarding the Alameda County General Obligation Bond for affordable housing. In response to the severe shortage of affordable housing, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors have authorized a $580 million general obligation bond for affordable housing to be considered by voters on the November ballot. Housing programs funded through the bond would address the affordable housing needs, both rental and ownership, of lower and middle income households in the county, with emphasis on seniors, people with disabilities, homeless, veterans, and other special needs persons. Under the program adopted by the Board of Supervisors, the city would be eligible for a base allocation of approximately $12,700,000 in funds for rental housing development projects, and would have access to an additional $27 million in regional rental development funding pool for East County, which includes Livermore, Pleasanton, and Dublin. The city would also be able to leverage local funding for down payment assistance and home rehabilitation with the county homeownership program funds available in this through this bond. Funding would be made available through annual requests for proposals administered by the county following 3 bond issuances estimated to take place in 2017, 19, and 2021. The proposed bonds would be paid for by an assessment of approximately $14 per 100,000 of assessed property value. The bonds would be expected to be outstanding for approximately 26 years. The actual amount assessed to individual property owners each year will depend on the amount of the outstanding bonds and the interest rate when the bonds are issued. County staff are now in the process of providing informational presentations throughout jurisdictions in the county to educate the public on the bond measure and programs proposed to be funded through the proceeds from the bond. At this time, I would like to introduce Linda Gardner, Housing Director for Alameda County. Ms. Gardner wishes to make a presentation regarding the upcoming housing bond. It is recommended that the City Council receive the presentation on the Alameda County General Obligation Bond for affordable housing. Linda?
Thank you for having me. I'm going to move through my presentation fairly quickly, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And Eric covered several of the high points, so I'm sure that your council is aware of the housing crisis that's going on throughout the county. This is showing the trend in rents through countywide, and you'll see in a slide in a minute that Livermore's trend is exactly the same, although the dollar amounts are slightly different. Home prices have also increased rapidly in the countywide, and they have now are exceeding, the median home price is exceeding the price before the crash in the market in 2008 to 2010. In Livermore, this is the median rent. Between 2011 and 2015, you can see that sales prices increased 72% from the bottom of the market in 2010, and 93% of very low-income renters in Livermore pay more than 30% of their income for rent, and almost 60% pay over half of their incomes for rent in your city. Whoops. Countywide, we have a shortfall of almost 61,000 units that are affordable to our lowest income residents. And these housing prices and the rapid increases in housing prices are having multiple long-term effects in many of our communities, in fact, all of our communities countywide. We're seeing long-term residents have to move either from their cities or outside of our county completely. More traffic congestion as they return into the county or into the cities where they work. When they're spending so much of their income on housing costs, they have less money or not enough money for childcare, food, health care, and other support to local retail and other expenses. Seeing overcrowding increase, which the public health director recently made comments on the public health impacts of both the stress of rising housing costs and also overcrowding, and tenants being afraid to complain about housing conditions because they were afraid that they might get evicted, et cetera. And the hypertension impacts and asthma impacts of that on our community. We're hearing from all sorts of businesses, from restaurants to hospitals to school districts, about the difficulties in attracting and retaining employees because they can't afford to live here. We're seeing increases in homelessness and just in general impacts to our safety net and our communities that impact all of us, whether or not we are currently affordably housed. In response, the County Board of Supervisors conducted a very inclusive process over several months, many months, that included 6 work sessions. It included input sessions and a poll, 2 polls, and a website and a survey to gather information about people's priority housing needs and what responses they'd like to see. That led to the draft of a program proposal, which then we circulated for comment and held more than 8 public meetings to receive comment and refine it. And all of that led to the board, as Eric mentioned, or Mr. Uranga mentioned, placing the measure on the ballot in November. The bulk of my presentation will focus on the bond measure, and I know you have the 2-page fact sheet. There's a little more detail in the presentation. We started off looking at the criteria for the bond program, and I won't go through all of these, but I do want to emphasize that it is a general obligation bond, and that means that the uses for the program have to be eligible for that financing source, which means capital investments that are related to acquisition and rehabilitation and development of real property. So these funds cannot be used for things like rental assistance or services related to housing or homelessness. The bond program itself is $580 million, and it's broken into 2 buckets with a number of programs under each one. Homeowner programs at a total of $120 million, and the focus is on rental housing of $460 million. I'll start with briefly overviewing the 3 program areas for homeowner. The 2 common components of all 3 of the homeowner programs that are proposed are countywide allocations. So they would be available to anyone throughout the county on a first-come, first-served eligible basis. They're also all revolving loans as designed in the program. So they would be provided in the form of loans, but they would not have payments because we don't want to add to the housing costs of the low-income and moderate-income homeowners that we're trying to support, but the loans would be due and payable when the homes are sold or transferred. The first program is a down payment assistance loan program. I don't know if I'm not pointing it at the right place. It's taking me several clicks, so I don't know. Anyway, for $50 million, and this is really the only program that's oriented towards middle-income households. And the goal of this is to help families and individuals in middle income buy homes in our county instead of having to go further and further out to afford a home. It's basically oriented at households that have income levels that in a normal housing market would be able to buy a home. But in Alameda County with our housing prices, they need some help. So the income limit, and there is a slide at the very end that has all the income limits and what kinds of incomes that is, so I won't go through that on every slide, but it is a middle income or 120% of area median cap. But we built in some flexibility to go up to 150% of area median should we need to do that to make the program effective in different parts of the county or due to the housing market changing even more. And then also because we have some target populations and we want to be able to serve them. And at least in some areas of the county, for example, if you have a 2-teacher household, you can exceed, they've been teaching for a long time, you can exceed the 120%. We are incorporating design features in the program to encourage people to buy homes near where they work and to really focus on our current residents in the county, as well as people who've been displaced from our county. We are working with legal counsel around fair housing issues to make sure we don't run afoul of those in designing the detailed implementation here. And then as you can see, we have a target of also supporting educators and first responders with this program. We've been hearing anecdotally stories of first responders that have bought homes 2 or 3 hours away from where they work. And then when there's a crisis and they're trying to get back to assist, it takes 2 or 3 hours or more for them to get there. The second program is a homeowner development program for $25 million. And this one is oriented towards lower income households to help them buy homes and to create additional affordable housing stock in the county. So the income limit is 80% or a low income limit. And these would be provided as construction loans that would roll over into first-time homebuyer down payment assistance loans when the households are actually buying the home. So this could be something like a Habitat for Humanity model, or in some areas of the county, a land trust model, or something where the homes will remain affordable. And the last homeowner program is a home preservation loan program. I know the city has some of this type of program, as most cities do, but much of the funding that used to be available for this type of program has been cut or eliminated through either redevelopment or reductions in CDBG and home at the federal level. So for $45 million, the focus of this program is to assist low-income seniors, people with disabilities, and other low-income homeowners to make accessibility improvements on their homes so they can age in place or if they become disabled, and to do health and safety-focused owner-occupied housing rehabilitation. The rental program, there's 2 programs for a total of $460 million that are essentially the same goals and the same target populations, but they'd be administered somewhat differently. And I'll briefly talk about those. The $425 million in the rental housing development program to create and preserve affordable rental housing for vulnerable populations, including lower income workforce. So the bulk of this housing we think will be affordable or be targeted to people at very low incomes, or 60% of area median or below. At least 20% of the units countywide will be affordable at the 20% level, which is Medicare, SSI, homeless households. And then a portion can go up to 80%, so still low income, but to promote a mix of incomes in the developments. We will focus heavily on leveraging other sources of financing to really maximize the benefit of the bond funds. There will be a required city contribution in any development that's financed with the bond financing. And that amount has not yet been set, so we'll be taking public comment and working with the cities around a reasonable leveraging of city funds. This is really intended to be affordable for the extremely long term, 55-year minimum, so that we're not creating what was created in the 70s and earlier, where rental housing was subsidized for a 20-year period, which some of us who've been around a while know goes like that. So really to prevent displacement and retain a mix of affordability in our communities. This will be very flexible use of funds. It can be early money to help spur development or later money, new construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation. I should have mentioned under the city on the last slide that this is really a partnership with the city. We're in partnership with you on the home program already. We've been in partnership with you on other programs, County Boomerang funds. And this is not a program where the county is going to come in and impose something on the city. Any development that happens in your city would go through all your regular planning processes and would have to be approved by your council. Some cities in our response to our original draft program, we got feedback that some cities would like to have a portion of the money be able to be used for interim crisis or transitional housing for homeless households. So we've included that in the final program design. And then you can see the target populations include some of our most vulnerable residents, homeless households, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, reentry, transition age youth, which has a very high risk of homelessness, and then workforce housing, all within the income levels that I spoke about a minute ago. Unlike the homeowner programs, which were countywide allocations, the rental housing development programs will have a geographic distribution that Mr. Uranga mentioned. And this is also on the 2-page fact sheet that you have, if people can't see that. And I do have extra copies of that if anyone would like to have it. So about half the funds, or $225 million, is divided by each city so that every city knows that they will have a minimum amount of money to use to spur rental housing development in their community. And for Livermore, that's the $12.7 million. And then you also, developments in your city can draw on the East County pool, which is the $27.3 million. The Rental Housing Innovation Opportunity Fund, which is the last program, is $35 million, and the goal here is to promote the development and preservation of that same type of rental housing, but to do it in a way that responds more quickly to conditions in the market. We are not in a market where things that come up for sale, for example, wait for a year for an annual RFP process. So our concept here, at least one of the programs, would be a rapid response, high opportunity loan fund, pre-approving a group of developers and having an application that they could submit over the counter when opportunities arise in the market, either vacant land, an apartment, a motel that could be converted to affordable housing, et cetera. And this is also a countywide allocation, so it could also be used to support development in Livermore. The measure is on the ballot. It's Measure A1 in November. And we are further developing the program policies. And also, just for your information, the board has set aside $5 to $7.5 million a year in former redevelopment boomerang funds coming back to the county for responses to the displacement crisis that's happening throughout the county and on homeless responses. So we're also working on those, and we'd be happy to come back and talk to you more about those when those are further developed. And then, as I mentioned, here's a chart that includes most of the income levels. It is, these are modified every year, and they're by household size as well as by the various income levels. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Questions? Vice Mayor?
Two, I hope they're brief. On the homeless issue, and I see it in the ballot language text in the presentation, thank you. Is it conceptualized yet to have any limitations? So, for example, we might have an interest in transition housing, not emergency shelter housing, but first time off the streets, rehabilitation, supportive services, moving to permanent rental housing after a period of time. Could those types of projects be constructed within the envisioned bond?
It would be eligible for the base city funding. We're not, the real thrust of the bond is permanent housing.
Understand.
So that would be up to your city council to decide on the base city allocation how much, if any, you would like to spend on that type of housing.
And that would be totally within our allocation.
As long as it met the conditions of the bond program, we would work with you on that.
Okay, second question. On the regional pools, in our case, the Tri-Valley, is there a governance model, a cooperative model to distribute those funds, or is it within the region first come, first serve to some central administration entity who's going to dispense based on project qualifications?
We would be running an annual request for proposals process to select those types of projects. So those would go to the Board of Supervisors for approval, but would need city support, as I mentioned before.
Okay, so it's still a much more of a city-by-city project initiative than three cities coming together and citing?
It would be a competitive program within the region, to the county.
Okay, thank you.
What I
Yes, Mayor Warner?
there's sort of a combination of what you just said there is that it doesn't preclude three cities from getting together and making a proposal. So, and that might even up the priority. So, I think what you suggested is possible, and do
Yes, and open the door in my mind to, they don't have a central regional process design, but certainly we could jump out and design one with our partners in the Tri-Valley.
Well, and I think what we've always said on some of these issues that you can't solve it in a single city, but it has to be a broader region. So then I think the question is how would we work with the other cities, and maybe staff would have some ideas in order to come up with joint proposals. But that's how we would do it, I think.
Well, the purpose of tonight is, of course, a yes vote in November, so, and getting our support to our local voters.
I should have mentioned it is a 2/3 vote, so we will have to wait till November 9th to see what the results would be, no matter what the requirement was, but it is a 2/3 approval.
So, Councilmember Turner?
Hi, Linda. Thank you for everything that you, the county, everyone home board has been doing to get this pushed through. It's not enough, you know that, but it's a nice start, and you have my vote. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully being able to, I know Jean back there is wanting to do some rapid rehousing projects, and he's got some great ideas, and I think we already have it all spent. So probably 10 times over. But and thank you for bringing us the information. It does have an uphill climb to get past that 2/3 vote, but you have my support and help to get it out there. So thank you for the information. It's fantastic.
Just a quick question. The required city financial contribution, when is that going to be, when are they going to figure that one out?
So what we've been saying so far is it will not be a 100% match. We want it to be doable by the cities, and we want to be flexible about it. So, for example, including things like waived fees, donated land, as well as cash contributions. We are working on the detailed implementation policies. After the bond passes, we would take public comment and city comment on them, and then we would take them to the Board of Supervisors for adoption. So within 6 months after it passes at the latest, I would say.
So you're saying that it can include waiver of fees. What about can other grant funds be used to leverage the city contribution?
Home funds, things like that, yes.
Okay, all right.
Does not have to be general funds.
Okay, very good, thank you. With that, I have, any other questions? Okay, I have 4 cards. Diana Biacciarelli, Leon Lee, and Juanita Riker Hussein. So one at a time, if you wanted to come up, Diana Biacciarelli.
I'll just get that, thank you. It's actually Diana Maria Bacciarelli. A lot of the things that I wanted to talk about, Ms. Gardner brought up. So I'm going to go more from a personal end with this housing and how important it is. I work right across the street over here at Vineyard Village, which is a senior affordable housing. We have 2 sister properties here in Livermore also, so there's 3 total. The mayor was actually at Arbor Vista for National Night Out.
That was a great evening, yeah.
So that's one of our affordable housings. And every day that I come into work, I'm a social worker there, so I help to keep the seniors living independently in their home by bringing in services and such. And every day we get 4 to 5 phone calls for someone who wants to put an application in. Or we get 3 to 4 people that actually come in. So these people are constantly coming in and needing housing. It's a big, big need. Our wait list is 3 to 5 years out right now, and we've got 300 people. That's just at Vineyard. The other properties are pretty much the same. So the need is out there. It's huge and it's out there, and that's just seniors. So we've also got homeless. We've also got oh gosh, I'm nervous. I haven't been up here before. There's so many other populations that need it. I mean, even me on a personal level, you know, I work for a nonprofit. I don't make a whole lot of money, so I can't afford to live here either. I'm actually looking at being out of my place very soon because I can't afford to live in this area anymore and having to move. You know, and I have a decent job, so it's very, very important that we have this bond. Okay. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Leon Lee, Juanita Riker Hussein, and dates in, looks like Lunas.
Hi, my name's Leanne Lee. I'm the social service coordinator at Hillcrest Gardens on Hillcrest Avenue. With the baby boomers and the aging population, finding the best care setting for the long-term care is like a challenge that we all face with our aging parents or ourselves, and especially for the low-income population. And aging is it's a scary and inevitable process. It brings emotional, physical, mental issues, and also it brings like a loss of social ties to a lot of the seniors. So working as a social service coordinator, we serve as an advocate and linkage for these seniors to many service providers, and we also initiate programs and activities to enhance their sense of well-being and help them age in place. And so I learned that being like healthy does not just mean the absence of disease. It also means like their wellness, their well-being, and like being well physically, emotionally, and being able to live independently. And so what I learned that as a service coordinator was that housing is really the platform to these services. Without housing, all these would not be possible. And where do we send the service providers to without a home? And it helps reduce premature admission to like a higher level of care, like nursing home. We all know that it's very expensive, the lengthy stay. But a home-based care is more tailored to the individual's needs. It also helps reduce the cost. So I urge you to keep that in mind when you look at the A1 bond to help the seniors and especially the low-income seniors. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Juanita Riker Hussein and Dezin Lunas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Juanita Riker Hussein. I'm the administrator for Hillcrest Gardens Senior Affordable Housing. We also saw you there that night, Mayor. I'm here to ask for the support for this bond for a couple of reasons. The measure will provide critical need for affordable housing for vulnerable communities who really need our help, like low-income families, veterans, seniors, and people. The measure will protect seniors from displacement and help with home repairs they need to safely stay in the communities and age. Combined, the three properties that we mentioned in Livermore have a wait list of over 900 people, and it's raising every day. As Deanna pointed out, people even that are not 62 and older, which our requirements are calling for housing. They're all looking for affordable housing. Hardworking families are being forced out of the area, requiring long commutes and adding even more traffic to our already crowded freeways. I'm new to Livermore. I love it here. This measure will help working families stay in the area and provide homes that can afford to stay close to their jobs and their family. A community is as strong as long as their residents can stay there. Mayor, you so eloquently put it on Focus on the Family. I heard you on the radio, and you talked about community, you talked about Livermore, and I feel the same way the minute I moved in here. It literally breaks my heart when I see these seniors. These seniors fear for displacement. That is fear, and it is real. So I ask for full support for the Alameda County Housing Bond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. My name is Darren Lowndes. I will work on my penmanship.
Wow. Oh, okay.
I am the, for the record,
Darren
LOUNDS.
Lowndes. Okay, got it.
I'm the Executive Director of Housing Consortium of the East Bay and a board member of Everyone Home Alameda County. HCB has 5 small supportive housing properties in Livermore with 20 extremely low-income tenants with special needs. We appreciate your visits in prior years to our properties. Really appreciate you being able to come out and see the properties, see the folks that are benefiting from your support. So as I mentioned, HCB and our tenants have benefited from the City of Livermore support, and I look forward to working with you again in the future. Tonight I ask you for your full support of the Alameda County Housing Bond. As Linda and Eric highlighted, the bond will provide resources to create more badly needed affordable housing throughout the county. It's a regional issue, and that's the beauty of this bond. Additionally, 20% of the funds will create homes for people with extremely low incomes, moving people off the street and out of parks and homeless encampments into stable, safe, supportive housing with the services and counseling they need to stay in their new homes. Thank you again, and we look forward to your support for the Alameda County Housing Bond.
Mr. Darren Louds, thank you very much. While this slide is up, people are always stunned when I tell them that people can qualify for low-income housing with an income of $75,000. This is a very expensive area in which to live. So with that, I'm going to close the comment period. Any questions or comments at this point? Would it be appropriate to have the council endorse the measure, or is that, let me check in with the city attorney on that? Would that need to be brought back?
The council, let's talk generically at first. With regards to the elections codes and campaign regulations, the city council could take a position on the bill whether to support it. The one thing you can't do is then direct staff to campaign for it.
Oh, of course, yes. But as far as a statement of endorsement from the council, would something like that be appropriate and legal?
You can do that this evening.
Okay. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there?
No, but I'll move for endorsement.
Okay. Moved by the vice mayor.
I'd be happy to second.
Okay. Seconded by the healthcare professional. Any
Serves on the board with Ms. Gardner.
Yes, right. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously to endorse the measure on this November ballot. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation.
We also have the fact sheet in Spanish and Chinese if you would like them. I'm happy to send them to anybody who would like them, and English.
Okay, appreciate that.
That'd be really useful. So I will send it to staff and they can.
In fact, I already have that, and I'll send it.
Okay.
Does that also mean we accept the presentation? Didn't we have to accept it too?
Well, it says it'll be given. It doesn't necessarily have to accept it, I guess. Thank you. But we accepted it.
No, it says the city can accept.
Oh, okay. I'm on the item itself. Okay, we've accepted the presentation. All right, on to the resolution of the Livermore Successor Agency approving the preliminary official statement and documents related to the sale of tax allocation refunding bonds. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Alessio.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Eric Peterson, and I'm a staff member for the Livermore Successor Agency. In 2001, the Redevelopment Agency issued bonds to eliminate blight and construct various capital improvements in the downtown area, such as the Railroad Avenue parking structure and some of the downtown streetscape. Approval of the resolution tonight is the final step necessary to refinance this debt at a significant savings to the community. On February 1st, 2012, the state of California approved a law to dissolve the RDAs. Obligations of the former RDA is now managed by the Livermore Successor Agency. Direction is provided by an oversight board and the State Department of Finance. On June 13th, 2016, the Livermore Successor Agency Board approved a resolution that allowed for the refinancing of these former bonds. There is no additional proceeds nor an extension of term, and they will still mature in 2032. There will, however, be a lower interest rate, which will get a savings on debt service, approximately $300,000 annually. That savings should flow to the affected taxing entities, such as the Livermore Area Recreation and Park District, the Livermore School District, the City of Livermore, and Alameda County. That same resolution also approved the issuance of tax allocation refunding bonds and associated documents required to do so. Finally, that resolution requested the Oversight Board approval of the issuance. On June 15th, 2016, the Oversight Board for the Successor Agency approved a resolution also allowing the tax refunding bonds. Staff then sent the resolution to the Department of Finance for their approval, and on August 12th, 2016, the Successor Agency received its letter stating that the DOF was approving that step. Successor Agency staff has worked with various consultants to prepare a preliminary official statement. Key sections of this preliminary official statement include the refunding plan, which summarizes the proposed refunding of the 2001 bonds. Sections labeled 2016 bonds and security for the 2016 bonds summarize the terms of the tax allocation refunding bonds and describes the property tax revenues pledged to pay debt service. On September 22nd, 2016, the Livermore Successor Agency received a rating of A+ by Standard & Poor for the 2016 tax allocation refunding bonds. The previous bond was actually a BBB+ because of the dissolution. Approval of this resolution by the Livermore Successor Agency Board tonight gives staff authority to work with the city's municipal advisor and bond counsel to determine a method of sale that staff concludes will result in the lowest long-term cost financing, and also approves a preliminary official statement as to form while still allowing staff to make final changes as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Turner.
So, Mr. Alessio, you'd like us to vote on whether or not we'd like $4.9 million more dollars to come back to the region.
Seems crazy, doesn't it?
It does seem. I don't know what we should do about that.
I'm thinking we might get a good vote on that.
All right. Once again, to our accounting and business services offices, you guys are always trying to squeeze every dime, and that's a big dime. So thank you very much. You have my support. Absolutely. We can absolutely use the money for a whole heck of a lot of things that have not capital improvement stuff that you're going to bring us sometime
So is
soon.
that a motion I can second?
That would be absolutely a motion. Yes,
So I
yes,
second.
yes.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Turner, seconded by Councilmember Warner. Okay, let's. I have no.
I have more questions.
I have no.
No,
Comments.
Just
Yes.
As your designee to the Oversight Board, we discussed this at least 3 times from conception through successive oversight actions and noticing to the state. And in lay English, if there's anybody still listening at home, we just refied the mortgage that built a whole bunch of the downtown redevelopment stuff. And the savings from the refi are going to go directly back to the agencies for general purposes. So no new debt's going to be incurred. No new things will be built by recycling the savings. The savings go back to all the mentioned agencies. And again, kudos to staff for watching the market rates and saying, hey, there's this mountain of debt out there that we can write down the interest on. So I really appreciate it, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I have no public comment cards, so go straight on to, do you have a motion to approve?
Well, I seconded.
Oh, you already did. Okay. All right.
Done, yay.
Okay. Well, I didn't have to open the comment period yet.
Oh,
so.
there we go.
Okay, so the comment period's open, closed. Motion, second. Any discussion on the motion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, very good. Moving on to 6.03. This is the Certificate of Appropriateness 16-007. The Historic Preservation Commission. No, 604. Hang on a minute. Wait. Back up. No, never mind. I had myself. 6.03, the 2016 National Citizen Survey questions. Okay, there we are. Ms. Ponto.
Good morning, or good afternoon, evening,
Good evening.
whatever this is. It's been a long day. Mayor Marchand and council members, I'm Donna Ponto from the City Manager's Office, and since 2004, the city has used the National Citizen Survey by the National Research Center in Boulder, Colorado, as one tool to identify resident values and perceptions of city services and its quality of life. And as you know, the survey's statistically valid results are then incorporated into the City Council's goal-setting efforts. Survey questions pertain to the following broad categories: safety, mobility, natural environment, built environment, economy, recreation and wellness, education and enrichment, and community engagement. The city may include up to 3 local closed-end policy questions in addition to the standardized questions used by cities throughout the country. In past surveys, the city has asked about various types of noise and city strategic planning about things such as the downtown revitalization, regional and local transportation, Springtown public facilities, and more. A question's possible answers uses some sort of scale, such as excellent to poor, or essential, very important, somewhat important, etc., or strongly support, somewhat opposed, etc. Again, this year's survey will begin in early November and conclude in late December. City staff must submit question topics and work with the NRC staff on the question wording by early October. Consequently, city staff wish to know the council's interest in including any additional questions, and if so, the topic. This concludes my remarks, and I'm available for questions.
Very good. Thank you. Questions?
Just.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Question. No, I mean, any questions of staff at this point? Okay. Now.
Or just maybe, I don't know if it's a question or a thought, but we've had the same set of questions for a few years. My inclination is that the main priority questions haven't really changed much, and that there's some value to just keeping it the same for comparability. Has staff identified any additional question that might be worth considering?
Staff doesn't have any on our list, and you are correct. The value of the citizen survey is the vast bulk of the questions are comparable over time, and you can get trend lines. You can have unusual results in any one year, but over time you can really track trends very nicely. And you know, I think the staff report noted a couple of the various areas that we've touched on over time. And if there's anything on your list of important things, that would be the area to identify, and then we can work with their staff at National Citizen Survey to make sure we craft the statement or the question in a way that gives us meaningful results.
Okay. Councilmember Turner?
Depending on my colleagues to my right, I do have an area of interest that I'd like to explore with the citizens, and that is their tolerance for alterations to the scenic corridor and how much they're willing to give up of the scenic corridor to get BART to Livermore. I don't know how to best draft those questions, but I think certainly as we're continuing to look forward with the planning, getting the pulse of the community is a good idea, and to see where we're at with that. So I just wanted to kind of toss that out to my...
It sounds interesting, and it seems difficult to phrase in a way that you wouldn't always get a no, or none. I mean, because you really can't appreciate it until you maybe see some of the visuals. But if in general you ask a question like that,
right?
So I think it's certainly valuable, but I don't know that on this survey you could communicate it effectively.
Well,
given
You could ask somebody what's more important to you, seeing the hills or having a BART train.
But I think
then they have to choose. I mean, that's what we're facing.
Well,
the graphics that we had at the last meeting, it wasn't quite that cut and dry. But if I can just a slight modification, because we're thinking on the same line here. The question that I came up with was, do you support BART coming to Livermore along the 580 corridor to a station planned with transit-oriented development at Isabel.
I don't know that people know what transit-oriented development entails.
Well, so this is why we have trained professionals here to take the questions that we start with.
Just say it's Lake Dublin.
But the question makes me happy, and that satisfies my needs as long as people understand that transit-oriented development might mean
Well, it means an increased
Livermore
density.
looks a little bit different than it does
It's an
today.
increased density around the station, but I would leave the wordsmithing to the professionals.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so
I'd like to support both themes, perhaps, as we swirl themes here. As to the first, as the one that I think first barked about the scenic corridor impact, I think they could work with the professional survey folks along something lines that Livermore has a scenic view ordinance thing, simple language to preserve the view of the hills when transecting 580, and the BART development for a length of time either side of the Isabel interchange could well block those views. Some kind of a yes/no. Is there a value there that BART versus blocking, views to some impact? And I don't know that the professionals will want or can word that. I think it's an interesting inquiry, and we could ask staff and the professionals. They understand the issue, what we're trying to get to, and is there a clean way to get a quick litmus test of that's important or not? And if they can't design it, if they agree that's way too many variables, like I think kind of the transit-oriented village thing is, I think down the road we're going to have to ask, poll, have some different final outreach on BART versus the transit development. I don't know that we're there yet, unless, again, the trained professionals say, yeah, you could ask it this way and get a broad winds blowing easterly or westerly, maybe.
And that's what I'm looking for is, let's just get a sense of the community. It's 3,000 members of the community that are asked. So it's a good cross-section, and it's a good, let's get the temperature.
There's another factor I think you could put into how you phrase it, but what we tripped to both in that recent development along the freeway and then the last design was we weren't just looking at 90 degrees, we were looking at different angles. Maybe it may be, does the community want us to revisit this scenic corridor angle so that we can minimize the impact of developments and still preserve, the maximum view of the hills? I mean, there's a philosophy here, or you could get to that in a way that doesn't set up a question that evokes all kinds of negative connotations to start with. Do we want to revisit how we think about the scenic corridor so that we can actually get good development and minimize and still maximize the view of the hills? That's another way to phrase it.
Well, it's not so, for me, it's not so much the view angles, but really a more fundamental question: do people? Because I was back in D.C. and I was told that they didn't want BART in Livermore, and so I think something like this would be very clear that you have. So when we go back to D.C., I can say, yes, we had a poll, and this is what it said.
Well, I think the other thing, though, is that I was just kind of joking around about Lake Dublin, but the point is that what we're talking about at that station is much briefer kind of visual impact. Sure. It's quite a bit different. So how you also convey the fact that what we're talking about is not analogous to Dublin. You kind of, I think this is you could ask the question, but I think it is so hard to phrase in a way that you can believe the results. I don't know that it's worth it at this point. But if you go ahead and say, let's get some draft questions, but you can't say yes or no at this point, but explore whether it's possible. I'm okay with that, but I just think it's tough.
I'm happy with the very generic question that the mayor has, knowing that if we do have support for BART to Livermore, which hopefully we do after all this work, then down the road we can do a more exhaustive survey on the specifics of the angles, the scenic corridor, all the impacts. But we haven't really gone out to our public. We asked it kind of sort of in the last survey, but I think it'd be really nice to have something that's saying, yes, 90% of the people in Livermore really want BART to Livermore.
Well, why not just
or
ask?
Whatever that basic number is.
because here's
And
why
that's
not
what
just-
his question does.
But-
Just
but-
ask it.
Well, not exactly. It's, do you want it despite this possible negative? So why not just flat out say, do you support it? Everything you know about BART to Livermore on that area, do you support it or not? Because you cannot convey all the positive and negatives. And if you start choosing despite this negative or and realizing you get this benefit, I mean, you just start coloring it. So why not just leave it a simple question? Do you support it?
Well, I think we need what the mayor has in his question on the freeway with housing around it. I think that's because those are core components.
It's the trade-off.
And that's a very
Increased
generic
density.
question.
With well, you could phrase it with some increased density housing around it. Just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay.
So can I take a stab listening to all of you? Because no, this is good. We're collaborating. But the transit-oriented development has to be translated to lay concepts, if it flies at all. Given what you just said about misperceptions in Washington with the funding authority, I also got a little bit nervous about asking a question that could be statistically bandied about that's otherwise not maybe a good result, because we asked something in the blind and got mixed emotions because they're still not looking at the plan yet. But let me just try. The opening sentence you had up to the point of transit development, including the impacts of a modest multi-story cluster of office buildings, residential units, and parking garages, which will change the character of 0.7 of a mile, whatever the metric is, in that section of 580. So somehow, I think you got to say it's going to be office. It's going to be an office park. It's going to be a multi-story residential village with parking for the train station, and given the design isn't finished yet, so that's the trade-off for BART.
Here's another way to do it. I like where you're going, but we have had a lot of community outreach. So you could ask this in like a two-part question. First of all, are you familiar with the plans? And do you support it or not? Right? I mean, in other words, two questions. Do you know what you're talking about, and do you support it?
And I think that's statistically better, because then the null answer is an answer. We asked 3,000 times, and 2,500 said they're not familiar with the plan.
Yeah. So in other words, rather than trying to encapsulate in a couple of phrases the plan, just have you seen the plan? Have you participated in the community outreach? And do you favor or not? Do you favor or not? And have you seen the plans? And that's all you need to know.
I don't need to know if they've seen the plan. I need to know whether, because most people here have not. What I need to know is the tolerance for people. How much do the citizens of Livermore want BART to Livermore? I want to be able to go to the BART board and fight for BART to Livermore, but I need the data to do that. I want to go to my legislators and say we need to fight for BART. I need the data to do that. And if we say, as you construct a survey, if you started off with, have you seen the plan, and then we nullify anybody who hasn't seen the plan, or we treat their other data, we may end up with a sample size of 50 that have seen the plan, and now we no longer have a statistically significant data. Let me finish. So okay, go ahead.
Right. So here's the point. We're asking a question, and we're qualifying it with, do you support BART to Livermore despite these following potential drawbacks? And we're not listing any of the upsides. It's just we're potentially coloring the answer. We're only listing downsides. We're not listing upsides. And so what's the point?
The upside is BART.
Well, no, but what is that?
That is the ability to grab a
Train in Livermore and not have to drive to Dublin. That is, I think anybody knows what BART to Livermore means when it comes to the train coming to Livermore, but they don't necessarily know that it also means that we're going to be doing some building. But I don't even care about the transit order. I just want a simple question on, do you want BART to Livermore? Yes or no?
That's what I would go with, just that, and don't start trying to describe what that means if you only are going to list negatives.
Is this clear yet?
You almost got there. I was counting to 2, and so it depends on what you're really trying to ask. If you're trying to gauge support of a particular thing to communicate both internally and externally with an audience, the simpler and clearer the question: do you support X located Y? If you're trying to give yourself help as to the design details of the specific plan, the amount of affordable housing, how big the setback should be from the creek, how tall the building should be in the center, this is probably not your tool. I mean, it would have to be as simple as, do you support BART with some taller buildings within a half mile of the station? But again, you picked height of building rather than bulk of building, or number of people, or number of school children, and so I think you've fully sort of noted the limitations of something that can be communicated in about 12 seconds at the end of a 15-minute. So I think what we're going to hear back from our professionals, having seen what they've done to every one of our questions that we've ever turned into them, they've gotten shorter, simpler, and have been, do you strongly support, kind of support, not support, and really strongly against BART to Livermore, to Isabel, in the freeway. That's kind of, you can get some useful, and you're right, people tell you what they think, not how many times they've seen the plan or what they know about the plan or any of those things. But of course, as we all know, being well informed isn't a requirement for having a strong opinion. But it's no less important, because those affect what we do, and sort of we listen to folks no matter how many workshops they've been to on those sorts of things. So your staff is probably going to recommend that you keep the concept simpler, because I think that's what we're going to hear back, and we don't sort of have the ability to iterate the questions very much. And I think the second point would be is if it is important for you ultimately to gain further information on building height, bulk, scenic corridor, those things, probably another tool at another time would be your better tool, your better choice at this point.
That's where I'm coming from. Is just, do you support BART at Livermore? And you could, if you want to, just, I'm sure you would say this. If you say no, that doesn't mean you support it going downtown.
Well, just say so.
Right.
BART along the freeway.
I would sort of
580
tell
Isabel.
them where, because strangely enough, we still do have some people who don't.
22% think it is still not going along the freeway.
So were there 3 or 4 heads nodding to essentially a question that asked, how strongly do you support BART to Livermore to Isabel Station located in the freeway?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's that simple.
All right, we got 4-0. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd like to float a trial balloon, and again, no, it may not fit my peers or the survey, but given the conversation tonight and our ongoing interest, and certainly the council subcommittee on homelessness and the survey work we did, would you support the city using and acquiring funds to build a homeless transition project in or near Livermore for Livermore homeless? I just said a lot in a sentence. Needs to be shaped, but basically say we think we're a caring, committed community. If we just broadly said we're headed down this path of trying to identify funding for some transition housing and to truly break the cycle of homelessness, is there give or take a couple thousand thumbs up? Yeah, that's within my value system, or no. But again, it's a touchy thing because there's not enough information there. If they wanted to dig into the question, it's pretty short in a survey like this to say I'm in favor of it or not.
Well, one of the qualifiers that if we are going to do something like that, I think it would be, at least for me, to qualify that for people that were local, that we don't just that we don't just suddenly open it up so that everybody sends the region's homeless to Livermore. That it would be for people that had lived here and were displaced, and to be able to provide for those from our community. But I don't want to just open the gates for everybody to come in.
That's why I said that's why I said it that way. But it's just a thought to my peers to say, yeah, if any of the three of you even think that's of interest as a survey.
So why not try and develop a question on that?
You mean let the trained professionals try to develop an attitudinal question?
So for every question we add, we have to take one away. Is that correct?
You get 3 questions.
We get 3. So we are at 3. So if we want to add that one, we need to get rid of 1 or 2 from the prior
I
survey.
thought we've only got 2.
We have 2 in the prior survey.
No, we're
and
not going to add those. We're not going to ask those again.
Bob had put on the table that he wanted those same questions before, so I'm just I thought that's what you had said, is that you wanted to keep the questions the same.
I thought he was talking about the base questions for the
So I'm just trying to clarify, because I interpreted it as that he wanted the other 2 questions, so that means we're up to 3. So if that wasn't the intent, forget it, and if it was, then we need to determine which of the prior questions we need to get rid of if we're going to add a 4th question. That's all.
I thought we were asking, you were talking about the base questions for the large survey.
But let's go in particular. Page 349, number 1. Is that what we're talking about? So maybe have we figured out Springtown yet?
I think we have.
I think we figured out how the community feels about all of the issues that are in
So I
item
don't-
1 and 2. They've been asked and answered. I think we're good.
In multiple ways, multiple times. So I think absent any new questions, I would have agreed with that a couple of minutes ago. Now I think we got maybe a couple new.
Well, the regional and regional and local transportation, we've already just reframed that to
Being more
we're
specific.
we're just changing that a little bit, and then for the other one, maybe the Springtown public facilities, we kind of know what's happening there or not.
Well, we're going to know November 8th.
Yeah.
So I think we got 2 new questions, is my sense.
So the other ones, I would.
So
those are the 2 that I would substitute out.
If I understand, essentially your 2 custom-made questions are one on BART and one on homelessness, and do our very best to get you some useful information back on both of those.
Yes.
And no
Those
other
are our 2 questions.
and no other reuse, recycling, or use of prior questions. Those are your 2 extras.
Correct. That works. I see 4 heads.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got that. Thank you very much. And now on to 6.04. This is the Certificate of Appropriateness, 16-007. This is about the Wagner Winery building. Mr. Guido.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. We're here to review a request to demolish a building. A certificate of appropriateness application is required to demolish a building over 50 years old. The building in question is a vacant brick winery building located at the corner of 2nd and Church Streets, or 1st and Church if Church were to continue. It's the last remnant of a once larger winery complex known as the Wagner Winery. Normally, the Historic Preservation Commission takes final action on such requests. However, this request requires City Council action for several reasons. First, it is in the downtown specific plan area, where it has an historic survey updated in 2003 and the downtown specific plan historic inventory. In the survey, it is assigned what is called an historic status code of 3. The downtown specific plan requires demolitions of buildings with status codes of 1 through 3 to receive City Council review. The historic status code numbers are simply a shorthand way provided by the state of California to help localities rank potential historic importance of older buildings. A 3 means that, in the opinion of the building surveyor in 2003, the building may potentially be eligible for the California Register. The structure's history is notable for association with the wine industry and the Wagner family. To retain significance, however, a structure must maintain historic integrity and a continuing ability to convey its importance. The Historic Preservation Commission concluded, following a site visit, a discussion, and a public hearing, that the building has lost its ability to convey its significance due to a significant loss of structural integrity. For example, it was observed much of the mortar holding the bricks together is now flaking or powdery and disintegrating, and cracks and holes are prevalent in the walls. An engineer's report, which is in the record, documents the significant structural and material problems of the building.
The city building official also deemed the building unsafe for occupancy. Historic Preservation Commission recommends the City Council approve the demolition based on the loss of the integrity of the historic materials. They made this recommendation on a 5-0 vote at a September 1st public hearing. The recommended findings are in the attached City Council resolution. The downtown specific plan also requires an additional finding by the council for structures with a 3 rating. That finding is over and above the findings required by the Historic Preservation Commission. That additional finding is that the demolition would have a community-wide benefit. Based on all of the information in the record, the public benefit of demolition is removing a building that is dangerous for people to be within or near, and therefore is a detriment to public safety. Staff recommends the City Council make the finding approving the application. Proposed conditions of approval include requiring the creation of a commemorative structure within any future project, such structure to include bricks from the building, as well as an educational plaque about the site's history. Reusing the bricks from the building to the extent feasible in any future project, and requiring the owner to allow the Livermore Heritage Guild to access the building for documentation and material salvaging. In closing, Historic Preservation Commission and staff recommend the City Council make all the recommendations in the resolution, instruct staff to file a notice of exemption for Certificate of Appropriateness 16007 in accordance with CEQA, and approve the Certificate of Appropriateness for the demolition of the former Wagner Winery building subject to conditions. The Council received 2 supplemental memoranda. One is in case the Council wants to contemplate denial of the application. It makes it clear that the 60-day delay that applies to denials of demolition by the Historic Preservation Commission would not come into play, and that the demolition denial would stand. The other is a letter received by email today, the content of which, upon review, does not change staff's recommendation. The property owner, Mrs. Bankhead, is present for questions and comments, as well as her structural engineer. And that concludes staff presentation, and staff's available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Do we have public comment on
We have, yes, we have a
I'll
public
wait.
comment. Wait, something? Okay. Okay, I have one public comment card. John Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I think with the downtown, we have to be careful to maintain the ambiance. We're making a number of changes. The train depot will be moved out of public view. The Mill Springs Park will be replaced with a plaza and a sculpture, and now this building will be demolished. We're slowly losing a lot of the appearances and ambiance of the downtown, and some of it has been replaced by what I consider soulless buildings that all look the same, with stucco and false brick and false stone. And I think the other concern I have is that we not make it too easy for people to essentially remove historical buildings by essentially not using them for a while or mistreating them. What I would suggest for this particular parcel is, based on the engineering report and the hazards, although it did withstand the 1980 earthquake fairly well, it probably is not a restorable building without a great deal of funding, and unless the downtown has a couple of $1 million they want to pour into it, it probably is not salvageable. But what I would like to suggest is that, as with the Ruby Hill Vineyard, not just a monument with a plaque, but a structure with the same form and materials be constructed somewhere on the site when it does get developed, that represents the history of the city. I mean, it can be a condominium or a commercial building, but it have the form and the materials, corrugated roof, brick, basically a very unadorned plain building with a large door at one end. And I think that would be a reasonable compromise to preserve some of the historical appearance of the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Okay, this is the only comment card that I have. So a couple of questions I've got. Mr. Spence, or Mr. Guido, the train depot and this building were built roughly at the same time, in the early 1890s. Is that correct?
In the same general period of time, end of the last of the 2 centuries ago and beginning of the next.
Yeah. Okay. So roughly the same. Now the train depot these are both 3S designations.
That is correct.
Okay, but neither of them is a landmark. I know there's special terms for landmarks, but the train depot, as much as it is a landmark for us, it's not technically a landmark.
So the state and the federal governments both have landmark status and historic registries. Neither of these buildings are a landmark or are registered on either of those registries.
Okay. Okay. And the council may approve demolition of these structures only under very special circumstances where necessary to allow or achieve a public benefit of community-wide or regional significance. I'll be honest, I'm just a little bit uneasy. We've heard a lot over the last couple of months about how people want to preserve things in the downtown, how people are, I know there are folks talking, for years we've been talking about a winery museum, a wine museum. And I'm thinking, we've got this old building in the downtown that used to be a winery. I think it's one of the last standing ones in the downtown. Maybe Riboli, but certainly, I remember going into this when it was an antique shop, many, many times. And as you pointed out, it survived the Greenville quake, survived the 06, and also Loma Prieta. So I'm just uneasy knocking this thing down without having more of a conversation about possibly, what could be done, what partners could be brought into this, and stakeholders. Maybe this is an opportunity to turn this into possibly the site into the winery museum that's been so sought after in this area. So I'd like to be able to maybe have somebody that is a preservationist to give as you said, the Ruby Hill Winery burned to the ground, and that was restored. That was rebuilt. So my thinking is I would not be inclined to knock this down that fast before we have an opportunity to look and see, could this area be transformed into a wine museum? Because I know we've been talking about that for 30 years here. Vice Mayor?
To build on that, and my apology to the applicant, because I really dug in and read this in the last few days. And when I looked at the engineer's report, obviously the commission and the applicant did everything by the law. And sometimes you can be right by the rules and still say, is there a timeout necessary? I'd like to suggest, if there's support for this, in fairness to the applicant, that whatever the technical procedure is tonight, instead of deny, but to continue for a brief period of time. I think the city, at the city's expense, like we've invested in Hageman, the city should provide a second preservationist report, accurately identifying the rehabilitation costs, if any. The city can discuss with the applicant the fair market value. Okay. Well, let me just get thank you, Nancy. Let me get the thought out. The city can and the applicant can discuss an alternative site design, perhaps wrapping the building, splitting the parcel, small lot. I'm being Pollyanna. Just let me finish the thought. But I don't know enough of that's in the evidence tonight, and a phone call and the emails to today, not necessarily the letter. I'm okay with the technical facts. I just don't know if every last, pun intended, brick was turned, and this is the last best choice for this council. And I'd like a bit more information. We've had a fabulous success. It was a tough road getting to Hageman and getting Hageman turned around. But if there's any chance that there's any worth other than a small token monument, I'm not convinced that we're to that point tonight. So, but I think it should cost us, not the applicant, to do the vetting and or any reconceptualizing discussion with the large wine growers, the Wine Growers Association, whomever may also have an interest in the building. Just it struck me yesterday and this morning that I don't know that I'm there yet just to say this is the only option remaining on the table.
So
given the information in the report. So could we hear from the applicant?
Well, what would such a study cost? Does staff estimate?
They'd have to come back to us.
I would say the report probably would be in the range of about $10,000.
Since we're asking staff to throw numbers out of the air, how much would it cost if somebody gets injured on this site because we didn't demolish the building?
To your best estimate.
So, from the city's perspective, we would not have liability. There are other ways to secure a site as well.
So even if it was us that decided not to demolish it, the liability still lands with this woman who does want to tear it down.
That is correct.
Yikes.
Well, as I said, and I'm relying on my colleagues here to see if there's any consensus, which is why I brought it to the council, or not why I'm bringing it up tonight. It would be my preference, than rather to knock this down, to take a look at it. We've already heard from the community. They like their old buildings. We've heard discussion for years about a winery museum. This would open up the downtown and allow that to happen. People were talking about having the wine trolley stop off at the train depot. How about the wine trolley stopping off at a wine museum? And I think that to have that conversation with the partners that have the potential of coming together to make something like that happen, we've got a very rare opportunity here, and I would be willing to at least pursue the beast what that study might be.
So there's another estimate is what would it cost to rehabilitate this building? Maybe is there what's
I've got a civil engineer that can give you some information. I need to get up and answer some of these questions for you. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking. But
I don't believe we have a cost estimate for rehabilitating the building at this point.
No, it would be, if I were to make a motion, I'm just still thinking out loud. My question to staff was, and then I really would like to hear from the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm conflicted, so I'd like to hear from the applicant, but if we pursue down this path, 90, 120 days, staff brings us back the bid for the preservationist assessment and any construction cost estimates. I said two things there, preservation estimate and rehabilitation cost estimate by a neutral third party. We then pull the trigger and say, go on the study. We make the information publicly available, confer with the applicant over options, and then a more fuller package comes back and says, not before us tonight in the packages, I'm sure what the applicant's about to tell us, but a second conversation happens. But it's up to you, Chair, if you want to hear from.
No, sure. Ms. Bankhead.
my parents bought this property in 1953. It is sacred to my heart, that building is. I had plans, went through the city, all ready to put a restaurant in there. This was 10 years ago. Could not get a construction firm to do it because they couldn't get insurance because the building is, Gary Drummond's told me this, that the mortar between the bricks has had clay in it. The clay whatever. Anyway, it's sand. You can take your finger, you can rub those bricks apart. What's happening right now is there's holes in the bricks. I have no way of protecting it. Every day I have the loss of bricks there. Every one of those bricks, every one of the beams is going to be saved and used as a facade of the new building. I've already talked to an artist. The size of that screen there is what they did there is they did bulk wine. It wasn't bottled in Livermore. It was sent to New York, and the railroad tracks were right on the back of that property, which actually we gave part of that land to use the city for the road, First Street. Anyway, they would roll the wine barrels up into the trains, and that would go away. I can see the guys in the A t-shirts, and that's what I want on the side of the building, like the size of that screen there. I've already talked to an artist to do it. That'll be in the middle of the center. Then on the street, I'm going to have a wine bottle, a 4-foot wine bottle with a cement thing with grapevines going around. I've already thought of this. I want to do a restaurant there. I want to do something to preserve the integrity of Livermore. Every one of those bricks is saved. I've got Carnegie bricks. I've been saving bricks for I don't know how long. And to tell me that you're going to put a wine thing in here when I couldn't put a restaurant in there and get insurance to save people, I mean, because people will get hurt in that building. I closed that building down because I couldn't take the thing on my liability, not the insurance, but on my head that somebody would get hurt in that building if it fell down on them. So I have tried and tried to save this building. I've got a structural engineer here that, can you tell him? I don't know what else more I can say. Just
can I
tell
make
him kind
some?
of an idea what the.
Councilmember Warner?
Yeah, I'm a kind of practical person, and I don't think this building is savable in any kind of real
I can
price.
take you over to the building.
And I don't think it's savable. I understand the need to preserve the character of the city. I think what the proposal would do that, and probably do it in a much more attractive way. At the moment, that building is not particularly.
It's an eyesore. I've got
Yeah.
2 buildings that my dad built there that have razor wire around them. I want to get them off the downtown
Yeah,
Livermore.
and you've got the garbage cans. I mean, there's nothing good about that place. And so at the moment, but I think that the plan makes sense. I think it's a complete long shot to think that you could rehabilitate that building in any kind of way. Now,
It is double bricks with a brick going this way all the way up.
I mean, it's just wasn't built well, and the fact that it's already gone through multiple earthquakes is no way means it's going to take. When the Hayward Fault goes, that this thing would survive, right? So my own thought is it's gone.
Well, in the report, there was talk about having a little stand of about 20 bricks high with a plaque on it.
Okay,
And what you're telling me is you're going to reuse the bricks for the facade of the building to basically recreate the.
Plus the artist I'm talking to want to build this brass plaque. It's just not going to be a little brass plaque. It's going to be something beautiful.
Well,
and behind that will be the bricks holding it up and something around it. Yeah.
Yeah,
what
'cause 20
what you
bricks.
guys want is not what I want. So I'm going to do it better than what was required of me. Because, like I said, this property means a lot to me. So, yeah. Go ahead, John. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
but as I said, in the staff report and from the Historic Preservation Committee, they were talking about having this little stack of 20 bricks with a little brass plaque on it. And that's just.
Okay, to me, that's some little kid going to climb on it, fall down, sue me.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I want something big and beautiful that tells me what happened in Livermore. I know there was wine made in here, yeah. John London didn't like the property, but I do. So I want to make it nice.
So and there's one other thing I'd like to inject at this time, and because we're talking about the mural. Councilmember Spadowski is ill, but he's sent me an email saying that he had talked with the member of the Wagoner family, and it kind of, from my impression of the conversation was they'd kind of come to terms with the demolition. was going to go forward, and that based on the conversation, there were 3 suggested additions to the conditions of approval to include specifically the end of the first sentence, condition B1, include and family, so the plaque commemorates the winery and the Wagoner family. 2 was the end of the last sentence of condition B1, include with input from the Wagoner family. They'd like to review the content of the plaque prior to finalization. Seems a reasonable kind of thought. And 3 was include a 5th condition to install a mural depicting the property when it functioned as a winery, which is kind of what you're talking about. So it sounds like the plan meets what the Wagoner family was interested in. It sounds like a significant upgrade to what we've got. So I personally am in favor of going forward with the plan.
I understand I'm tearing down an old building in Livermore, but if I tear it down and build something better, is that a bad thing?
And stated differently, the reason I'm asking the question is there's second guessing going on between the historical and the legacy families.
And I don't know the Wagners.
And even you can interpret one of the Wagners' descendants' emails today a couple of different ways. It clearly says, we asked for time to have a thorough historical due diligence process completed to deconstruct and look for artifacts. So they're not saying don't knock it down, but they're saying,
I can take anybody into the building.
To finish my thought, what we have is an application from the owner, developer, and your engineer that says the cost to restore exceeds the cost of building the building new. We all know that. Bruno's, the Ale House, other cross-linked pre-1933, early 1900 brick buildings can be structurally stabilized in some circumstances. Mortar can be repointed, steel and trusses can be added at an expense. And I'm not suggesting that expense be transferred necessarily to this owner. I'm saying, do we step back and get a non-applicant study that verifies really nothing can be done with this one so the community can understand that the last step of due diligence was done? That's what I'm asking for.
I can understand that, except for there's no way of locking up that building at this point.
There hasn't been for a decade.
Yeah, there has. It was locked up for about a year, until about a year ago. And there's holes in the walls that people are stealing the bricks. So what do we do? You know, I'm stuck in the middle here. You guys tell me.
I move staff's recommendation for demolition of the building.
Okay, is the motion? Is there a second?
I guess I need to, I think we've only 4, and I know which way this is going to go. So, and a no means, know how it's gonna a tie vote means no, right?
Right, I know.
So I would suggest we wait until we got 5.
I'm willing to wait another month if that's what you guys think is right. And the one letter I wrote or read today by I don't know who, the facts were totally wrong. I've not given any money to any of you guys.
I hadn't even considered that.
Had not yet heard that rumor.
I haven't heard anything. Oh, you broke it.
Not predisposing a vote for a motion that hasn't been seconded. I said I was thinking this through. I said not predisposing a vote that hasn't been seconded to a motion. I just said at the beginning, I'm thinking this through. I wanted to offer the applicant a chance to perhaps have us get an independent assessment to erase any Livermore discussion that this was a haste to demo. But I also heard new testimony tonight that didn't ring through in the staff report about wanting to build a small commercial building, about wanting to do some preservationist historical stuff that I'm also fine with. So I just as soon have the second call it, and if the applicant doesn't want us to spend a second opinion study and wants to proceed and is certain in her heart, because in the end of the day, you're a legacy family, you've got to look your friends in town in the eye and say the building was beyond any reasonable investment of even public grant money. It had to go. That's the applicant's business. I got to respect that too. Now, if 60 days doesn't matter and staff says we can get somebody in there for 10 grand and 30 days, we're going to wait a minimum of 2 meetings anyways, because our agenda for next meetings all
Right.
but set.
So I like where you're going. I don't think we want to decide this tonight with only 4. If we can get a second engineering opinion within 30 days, I'm good with that.
How busy are structural engineers?
Okay. So it appears the motion dies for lack of a second.
Well, so I'll make a motion that we do get the engineering study and we get it back in 30 days so that we can get this back on the agenda and a decision made within 30 days.
30 days may be a challenge, but we can certainly try to get it done as quickly as possible.
There's some conferring going here.
Well, and I'm looking at the calendar too, because with the lead time from staff reports, even the meeting of October 24th, it means final documents and out in a package by October 14th, and that's just not going to happen. They need 30 to 45 days to procure it and get the report back.
So the point is, we want to do this expeditiously. I hope you realize that if you get a vote tonight, you're going to get the wrong answer.
I understand.
Okay, so you got.
Frustrated, it doesn't matter.
Well, I can be frustrated with you, but I don't see any other way through this.
I don't either, because unfortunately the facts were not brought up. I literally did not know this was going on till 6 o'clock. I knew about the meeting. I didn't know that I was doing this till 6 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
When I got a call from the city.
I'm personally prepared to make the decision tonight in favor of letting you do what the suggestion, but I don't see we can get there. So I'm therefore making the motion to get there as soon as we can. And minimize, and I really don't want to waste a lot of time and money on this, but that's where we got to be, it sounds like, unless somebody changes their mind.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I think I hope it's said. I've been swayed by the applicant. I'll second the motion.
Wait a minute.
Seconding mine or his?
Go ahead.
First.
Oh, okay.
Okay, died for lack of a second.
Would you like to make a new motion or second?
So, wait, we got.
I'll retract my motion. I'll retract mine. Go
Are
ahead.
you going to retract your motion?
I
would
retract
like
my
to restate my motion because I really don't want to spend $10,000 of the taxpayers' money to tell me the building needs to be torn down. It's unsafe, and I, again, once more, would find that it is an unsafe building, and the city council, I find that we are doing a public service by saying, yes, please, please, please destroy the building, save absolutely everything you can, and make this a lovely historic building that we can all be proud of. And so given that, I am absolutely, once again, in favor of staff's recommendation to approve the COA. Is that what I'm doing? Thank you.
And I second it because it's an excellent design and use of the area, of the building and the materials, of the site and the materials.
Now, does your motion include the concerns from the original family to allow a?
And I'm willing to work.
My motion does not, but I am more than willing to include an amendment
access
should
to
somebody
artifacts.
wish to amend my motion.
We add those 3 as well.
Then I accept the amendment to my motion.
Okay, I second that. Or whatever.
Okay, so based on what I have heard from the applicant, that this building, in effect, will be recreated with the brick facing and the like, or with a brick facade. And maintaining that historic character on that site. Okay.
I don't know if you guys part of the thing was I have to keep that plant that's on the
Yeah.
vine that's on
Right.
there. And so that's, my thing is grapevine type of look, yeah. And it will look really good as you come into Livermore. It's gonna show where Livermore or where the downtown starts. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, this is sorely needed.
Yeah, we didn't see that. So. Okay. Any further? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
Comment to staff instead of waiting to matters initiated. If there's support up here, could we ask staff to research some trigger point thresholds in terms of what is a significant historical building and come back to us with a proposed requirement ordinance that on significant historical buildings, an independent preservationist study at city's expense needs to come to us along with the applicants. In other words, this got really far down the road, and then the second guessing goes on because it's all based on applicant information. And just to name a name, not that it's going to happen, but if somebody comes in with something like the Shononi building, the Shononi building has a bad fire, at what point do we say, but there's enough historic bones left? And right now, the way the process is constructed, it's all the applicant. It's not the city on behalf of the public interest. And that's what the itch I was trying to scratch and ensure that all the parties were respectful to each other about that conversation. That's all. Just if you all would support another conversation, another time about historic demolition process, and does the city have a governmental right to intervene and ask for its own second opinion?
So good matters initiated.
Yeah, what I just heard was a precursor of matters initiated, basically to change our historic preservation regulations, and we can certainly bring an item back for you all to consider what elements might be included in that and what trigger points might be.
Okay. Calling the question.
Okay, with that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for...
Make us proud. We know you will.
Yeah.
No question.
Let us know when to come to dinner.
Oh, you'll be seeing the plans.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for indulging me in that discussion. I felt it was an important discussion to have, and thank you to the applicant.
Well, I think that new information that we got here, and knowing the applicant and everything, and that's going to be a really good entry to downtown.
Well, what concerned me was the stealing the bricks, because somebody's going to pull the wrong brick. It's going to be like Jenga.
Just as long as they don't throw them at us, right?
Yeah. Okay. Bear with me for a moment here. Okay, we're on to matters initiated and committee reports. Okay, Councilmember Warner, start on the other side.
Okay, I've got a few things. One is on the committee reports. I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I had been in favor of with the Altamont, the landfill money, the open, for that we start figuring out what to do, because we're building up a fair amount of money, but we don't have any kind of acquisitions out there, and maybe we have to be more proactive. So one of the things we got on the agenda was to compile a list of common priorities for that area. And so a lot of organizations have proposed various areas, including Doolin Canyon, Springtown, Alkali Sink, Tesla, Coral Hollow, Cedar Mountain, Brushy Peak, Altamont Pass, 580 Wildlife Crossing. But they haven't been officially adopted by the respective city councils. So that's now in process to come back to add those kinds of things explicitly, and that would happen in the councils and the Board of Supervisors in the March 17 timeframe. Then the other thing that is going on is because of the action we took a while ago with respect to the off-road Tesla Park area, and there's going to be a letter saying that going to the state saying that should they change their mind and want to unload the property, that we've got some money that could go to the purchase. So they'll just get that letter, and that would happen in time for their final deliberations. Whether or not it makes a difference or not, that's another story. But it is within the county. I mean, it's within our county, and it's an appropriate use. So we've gotten that far down that path. So those are the kind of things that are going on. So maybe we'll get some action on getting some more land of sizable amounts preserved. So we're going there. So then so that's a report out. On matters initiated, I've got a few, and I don't normally do this, but I've got a few, and the first three are focused on taking action to improve the downtown. These are things we can do while we figure out what's going on with the downtown specific plan. So I think that we know that downtown specific plan has got some issues that are going to take a while to resolve. So I'm coming at this with a spirit of, well, let's get moving on some things that we can do that are feasible. So that's where I'm coming from. So the first one is the mayor had a great idea on Livermore Plaza. And I think that I'd like to see that dual tracked in two ways, and that we split the legal and design tracks, and that we're pursuing the legal resolution as to the liabilities for cleanup. I would like to see that the design be done and approved so that when the legal issues are resolved, we can move. So what I would ask staff to do is come back with the, what's the high-level work plan and, the milestones and the timeline for finalizing the design. What do we got to do to get this done? And even through lining up the implementation contracts. But I don't see any reason not to get moving on that. The second one is the plaza in front of the bank.
I think I saw 3 heads.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think you saw 4, maybe?
4, yeah.
4.
And certainly,
maybe.
And certainly it's consistent with all our previous discussions on Livermore, and the hiatus was caused by the legal headache.
But I think what happened is we went in there, we kind of had the design, we kind of like, okay, maybe we got to rethink that. Then we got into legal issues. I just want to get it done. So what do we got to do to get it done on that? And I think I've seen some great suggestions, and let's just kind of go. So the second one is the plaza in front of the bankhead. I believe that adding a shade is a good idea, and especially anybody who's been out around today probably thinks that too. That we need to evaluate some options and choose one. I know that LVPAC put something out there. My wife even injected into the conversation, and people that was favorably received. But I think we ought to get moving on that, and I think we should also consider. Are there other design modifications? Somebody mentioned maybe that wall is a little bit too restrictive and stuff, but maybe let's just think about that, because that's something that's within a confined space, and we can do something, and we don't have to wait for the larger view to maybe improve that and make it a better place. So if you think about the Livermore Plaza in conjunction with that in front of the bankhead, we've got an opportunity to add some good usable space for downtown and some center.
So just to clarify that, are you talking about bringing the consideration of that awning back to the council?
Well, no, not necessarily that awning. I think design, and I think actually that's people have kind of discovered that the other suggestion of how to provide shade is better than the awning. But I'm saying let's think about. Pardon? Oh, some of these triangular things.
Those canvas leaves type things? Okay.
I mean, there's something, what I'm saying, and it's worked effectively, what I'm saying is I'd like to consider adding shade and other things to that area to make it more hospitable, especially in the hot weather. And just, get some design options, or figure out, are we going to do nothing, or are we going to do something? But just have a plan for what. If we wanted to make a decision, we should make a decision whether we're going to do something or nothing, and just bring it to a head, get done with it. So I'd like to have that evaluated.
And I think that's consistent with what we said a year ago at the final budget meeting when we turned it down just for lack of process and design competition, not that it was not a good idea.
Right. So what I'm saying is...
I think, let me try to help. It's not the work plan, it's not the it, it's the work plan to get us to the it. Is a design competition, is an art competition, is a structural shade, bid process, working with all of the now tenants, obviously, and the building owners, us owning the bankhead, obviously, but working with everybody around the plaza. And I would also support, I think you all but said, slight modifications to the bankhead plaza. If we're going to build Mill Springs Park, and somebody said, hey, could we do something a little different with a small chunk of wall or the turf, that would be the time. We've got contractors working on one park to get
That's
some
what I'm saying, is to think about these as they're close enough in proximity they ought to be thought about together, and their usage, and we can think about the impact on the holiday parade, where we end it, how we do things. You could put up some kind of Christmas light display there. Things. I mean, there are things that we ought to do that makes this a nicer place to live. And then the third component of this kind of thinking is it.
So on the second, was there concurrence on that?
Yes.
And if we're talking about a shade, not just something for the stage as was previously proposed, but I think you're talking about something that would help the audience.
The more general phrasing is to make that place more hospitable in the hot weather. Especially, I mean, but a more usable, friendly place to be.
Like we'd seen those like canvas leaves.
Nothing. I'm not being specific. It's just the idea. And I like what Vice Mayor Gary said. Is the deliverable here is coming up with what's the process for getting somewhere here, rather than just have an idea flit around. But let's start driving to a deliverable. Then the third one is, and this is more like a status report, because LDI has suggested putting lights on selected streets between First and Second so that we could make that a better pattern. And I think that there's been some conversation on that, but what's the thought of when we could have an answer on what that might cost and how to go about it? Or, could you just give a status report now on it, or?
Yeah, I can, which is you are correct. Staff has had some conversations with essentially improving the lighting intensity. As you know, the lighting on First Street is much, much brighter than it is anywhere else in the community, and essentially adjusting the light intensity essentially on J and K and some of the side streets to match more closely what's on First Street. So if the council would like us to agendize essentially an item giving you an update on that and a cost proposal on that, and especially if there are any unique ideas on funding, we could include that as well. But that could return to the council if that's the council's pleasure.
Yeah. So that was the third.
Okay.
Yes, and could I add to that, because you're listening to you, I think there's two components to the return. It's the festival fun lighting look. And given the fact we went with the LEDs, that at least in residential areas, for both design reasons and homeowner aesthetics, have very sharp cutoffs, is a very defined pool of light, as we remember with all our research. Yeah. Probably not the best thing to have sharp cutoffs and small pools of light in a commercial district. So I think second and third need to come back pretty much the run of downtown with how can we improve just passive safety, foot traffic lighting, second breath, and make it look festive and fun and part of the First Street experience. Oh yeah, but I think the complaints I'm hearing is the underutilized surface lots are being parked up. Heck, we've admitted on the record the secret to parking downtown is on second and third and walking up a block. Street lighting's maybe not the best.
Right, and so and there are a number of places, but I think this is so the general theme of these three things is let's improve downtown's usability and whatever the character in ways that we can relatively inexpensively. I think will make a dramatic impact, especially if we start coordinating these things. So then so that's those things. Now the fourth item, if you bear with me, was that last time I asked to fast track getting additional parking next to the existing garage, and I wanted to just clarify what I think is a the highest priority with respect to coming back with us on something on that, and that is the traffic study. Because I think we all know that have used that garage that the existing traffic flow with the existing garage is lacking. So now we're talking about adding more parking, and we're talking about various options for the downtown specific plan. So what I'm really interested in knowing is if we add this garage and we want to facilitate some of the options that we've heard about in the downtown specific plan, is there a solution? Can you add that parking there? Can you add, and then are there any options that have been discussed that are precluded, and are all of them feasible to one degree or not? And the final piece of this is, so I'd like to make sure it's clear that that traffic study is the highest priority coming back, and that we don't have to have the costs and the engineering details to start with, but it's the traffic flow that matters, and that ideally, given the conversations we've had in the past with the various stakeholders, that the entity that does the traffic study gets kind of vetted and approved in advance of the answer coming back, so that we don't have a situation where people don't like the answer, so then they start challenging the competency of the firm that did this study.
So starting at the end, our parking consultant is Water Designs. Basically, one of the very large parking design, one of the things they do ultimately is parking structures throughout essentially the western United States on that. So they are not an unknown quantity. They're essentially one of the big boys doing that. As far as internal circulation, the circulation of the garages and the interface with the street and the circulation system, there'll be a piece of that. We'll also have others involved in essentially the actual stacking. I mean, one of the things you have, and everyone knows, is you have a conflict between essentially pedestrian movements and vehicle movements. And so one of the questions would be, how would you deal with that? And what I'm hearing is you all would like to have that fundamental question about traffic circulation. Could we essentially, for all practical purposes, double the amount of parking in that general vicinity and still have the circulation in and out of the garages and to the surrounding uses work? And if the answer is yes to that, then let's worry about cost, design details, all of those things. And if the answer is no to that, then let's look at some other alternatives. And you'd like to be involved at that threshold question point. Is that?
You stated it far better than I ever could have.
Okay, we can do that, and we can bring that back to you first.
And I think that might be enough for me.
All right, Vice Mayor Gary.
I'm glad it's not 5 to 11. Okay, inside joke. Just one report out meeting. Attended the monthly Livermore Downtown Inc. board meeting last week. To reiterate my previous comment under the historical preservation, knock the old buildings down discussion, if staff could research, are there some appropriate trigger points that larger, more significant structures, not a 40 by 40 barn that burns down on someone's back lot on South K Street. Not wishing ill on anybody on South K, but now that I said that, but the significant legacy buildings, I just think I think the public interest might be served by having a public second opinion report and giving our historical commission and ourselves just more information than just an applicant. So if there's approval to head nodding.
So I see head nodding on that front, and so we would bring back something with options that would deal with either prominence of location, prominence of historical nature, its significance rating as being possible triggers, and essentially some combination of those triggers requiring, for all practical purposes, a publicly funded, publicly hired second opinion. And we'll bring back some options for you to consider what those might look like.
And the legal research, if it's even done in other communities, if it's legal, et cetera.
And we would bring this back to you, but much like we do for any development project, this fact that the city chooses the consultant and ultimately directs the consultant can be independent of whether the city funds the consultant, you all could consider that when we bring those items back. But development projects, we drive that analysis, we control that analysis, but in certain cases, that's paid for by an applicant. And again, that might be one of the
And
things.
that's another appropriate venue.
Very good.
Or tool in the box.
And you can take a look at those things.
And you choose which ones that you do,
You do,
right?
Just like an EIR.
Right.
The next thing is I'd like to, and have my peers indulge me for a minute, on the downtown housing conversation. So under matters initiated last time, we asked for staff to bring us back a work plan, how we can engage a conversation on the downtown housing allocation and the now somewhat aged downtown specific plan, given the city parcel interest. And the community heard us say at the end of the large community meeting, could we get some traffic study numbers to calibrate units on our parcels with? In continuing to think about this, and the straw that broke my camel's back is what I'm about to suggest may surprise some of you, was even getting a phone call this morning from a person who knows they're in a temporary building situation about to be displaced because the parcel may or may not be sold, may or may not be developed. We had an application tonight that is in effect housing on the east end of the downtown. It's a small one, but the conceptual drawings were housing. I have said for a year and a half, we can't plan the downtown a parcel at a time. And with the respect of my peers, it's getting lost in the winds of the downtown RFP, the downtown RFP, the downtown RFP. There's only so many traffic nodes in and out of downtown. There's only so much commercial left to build. We need to revisit the housing allocation against a traffic model and other EIR conditions until I believe all of the downtown parcel owners with a housing interest, where they think they'll sell their commercial building and let's build housing of some type, slow the bus down. That's not what the community conversation is continuing to evolve into. I don't think this council's request for information is being heard, nor do I think the applicants understand in a red-hot economy that maybe Livermore, even though we haven't said a word, we've opened the door to mid and tall housing. And certainly no one in this council has advocated for any of that, other a continued conversation and discussion. I think on the downtown housing issue, we need to hit the pause button big time, big time. And the only thing I think that will get the property owners and community's attention is for us to come back with an urgency ordinance for a downtown housing, downtown specific plan area housing moratorium for 6 months. No housing approvals that aren't entitled until we recalibrate the amount and density of housing vis-a-vis the circulation system, our thriving entertainment district, and we get it right. Not commercial, not the other projects we've been talking about, but if somebody thinks I'm going to go buy 2 raw acres and go 4 stories high with it, then we've got the poor planning commission and ourselves back to planning a parcel at a time instead of saying what is the housing capacity circa 2017 in our downtown. And the only legal way to call for a timeout is a housing moratorium as an urgency ordinance, so those parcel owners who are already in the pipeline clearly hear us saying we've got to have a data-driven and a social community conversation about height and density in the now thriving downtown that the Downtown Specific Committee couldn't have, however many years ago it was, 12?
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
Again, 7 years ago.
So
and 3 years ago.
If there's at least 3 head nods, it would take obviously a 4/5 affirmative vote for an urgency moratorium. My suggestion is tonight, if the council would support it, to ask staff to research it, waive the Friday due date rule for the October 10th agenda, give them in the next week to work on it, amend the agenda, and bring us back for consideration a moratorium on October the 10th.
Do you think 6 months would be a long enough time for something like that?
That was my question.
Certainly. When you adopt an urgency ordinance, if you're to pursue that, Vice Mayor Gary, you're correct. It is a 4/5 vote. The initial one is a time period of 45 days. It can be renewed after that time period, but your initial time period is 45 days.
We would recommend to you during that 45-day period that we bring back additional information to you. so that the length of the ultimate moratorium could actually match up with you getting some information and making some decisions.
Which is the
would
work
be-
plan we asked for last meeting.
Yes. So 6 months sounds a little too tight at this particular point, but I believe within the 45 days we can actually have a work plan for you to then adopt, and then that'll tell everybody where we are and what our timeline would be. And that you are allowed essentially to then add up to 10 and a half months to your 45 days, so that at the outside you have a year. I don't know whether it would require all of that, but we could use the 45-day period should 3 of you decide to tell us to do this, and then ultimately 4 of you approve to move forward with the moratorium. That would be sort of the order of events that your staff would recommend, so that we could have complete information.
Councilmember Turner?
I just want to add to that a little bit. At the community meeting that we had, I had asked for a systematic traffic study and had basically said the same thing, that I didn't want to see any more building until we had that. So I just want to ensure that we're looking at traffic, parking, the whole works before we move forward on anything. Because I agree, we need to step back, and there's little piecemeal things happening, and we need to go back. I know we have a downtown specific plan, but we had an entirely different downtown back then. And I think that we really need to look at the jewel that we have and really consciously sit down, have the community conversation, so that when we do get projects in, we have already discussed and vetted all of the projects ahead of time. So absolutely, my head's nodding.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, I'm saying housing.
Yes.
Dwelling unit.
Housing, not the hotel.
Well, not just the
Or
hotel.
other
If there's
things.
some restaurant operator in escrow today, unbeknownst to us, getting a space on Pick a Street to open a restaurant in, where I do not intend to chill the commercial retail economy in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But the housing demand, along with increased entertainment demands, chokes the road network and chokes the parking. Let's get the housing, the road network, and the entertainment demands back in equilibrium with parking, as we've started to task staff with. And then let's see what's left for dwelling units anywhere. That might have to be a height conversation, but I'm just really concerned more than one applicant's going to start to run the entitlement process and run into different community planning commission, council chuck holes, and that's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the residents. It's not fair to the applicants to have a piecemeal conversation about something so important. It's not working.
Okay, so Councilmember Turner?
And at the same time, just to reiterate, whole downtown specific plan, but then when you do come back with the housing or different suggestions, I really need the numbers for all of Livermore. What's planned, what can happen with what's currently zoned, where are we at with total build out, so that we can look at where are we at with police and fire, where are we at with everything when we're looking at all this planning, so that we get a nice snapshot of, not a snapshot, it would be quite a large photo, but so that we can make our decisions better. That would, and I just threw a lot more in your lap, sorry, but.
So what I heard is get something on the agenda for the next meeting. That gives us a 45-day time to figure out what we're really going to do. Is that, I mean, and, you know, the specifics, I mean, all of the things we're trying to say now, we're not trying to be definitive as to what the final thing is, but we've...
So the item on your agenda and would essentially define an initial 45 days, it would initial uses impacted, it would define a physical area that is covered, it would clarify uses that aren't impacted by the moratorium, and you are correct, we would use that 45 days to define a work program as to those things that would be analyzed, essentially what steps we would take during that process, and then you would have the ability to extend the moratorium based on that information.
Yeah, and the other impression I've got is 6 months is tight. This thing we'll figure it out in 45 days, but it could go to a year, which is then feasible. I mean, so certainly somewhere between 6 months and a year we'll get this figured out. But we have the process we're talking about initiating gives us that latitude.
That is correct. The maximum time permitted for a moratorium is 12 months, and the combination of the 2 bites that we talked about. And it would be essentially your staff's recommendation that, yes, we do use the 45-day period to define a process where we can accomplish as much as what the council's laid out there, and ultimately will give us direction on, should they actually consider the actual moratorium during that 45-day period.
And in your research, so we don't ask questions midweek without all 4 of us here, my concept is significant development. So if someone's going to do, and you look at the zoning and stuff that may be in the pipeline, a granny flat, someone splitting something on far west 3rd Street in the DSP, and they're going to put 2 houses down instead of 1, if there's some common sense, low, modest, homeowner level thing, I'm not trying to chill that, trying to chill major parcels who think they can scrape and replace and go high density. That's what we're trying to plan for. The granny flat's not going to change the traffic pattern 1 iota.
That's analogous to that llama thing we were in, where, right, as to what you can add to the pipeline and stuff. So yeah, there's some minimum de minimis that doesn't matter.
And we'll need to bring some information back to you to sort of get a sense of where people are, to make sure that at least you're aware of the consequences of where you're catching various people in the process here, and have you give us clarification on that as we deal with that item. But that, of course, will be the actual item before you rather than the matters.
Okay. Yes. That's enough. Councilmember Turner.
How about I have a matters to be initiated to talk about the downtown? Just a quick question. Where are we at with the slate replacement project?
Well, I do know that we have it as part of our sidewalk replacement program, and I know we did our original test section, but I don't know whether we have any other sections. And actually, I'm going to ask Sherry to come forward and speak to the microphone rather than play sign language, because.
Or I can put it under matters and she can bring it back some other day. I thought it would be a simple question.
It might be. You just have to get the right person to answer it.
Yeah. So right now we're in the middle of the asset management program, developing what it is our sidewalk program should be. The next program that comes forward after we get that straightened out will include the next phase of bluestone repair. I assume that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I thought we had already funded that.
We funded the first phase that's completed, but we haven't funded beyond that at this point.
We had any injuries recently?
Not that I've been made aware of. We've had trip and falls, but not on the bluestone.
I would like that fast-tracked, but I'm not going to put that under matters to be initiated. I have things to report.
All right.
Just 2 very quick and easy. On September 22nd, went to Innovation Tri-Valley, and I just mentioned that because if you've never been, you got to go to the Dream Makers and Risk Takers Luncheon. Highlights all of the fantastic, wonderful things that are happening in this community, and I'm always blown away. We had 2 honorees that are graduates of Las Positas College, which just is fantastic. We had a group of students develop a relaxation app for their peers, which in an age of rising teen suicides and rising depressions and all of the things going on in the world for these teens to take time out of their life to create this app. I was unbelievably impressed. But what really got me were 2 young ladies who didn't know each other and banded together through their commonality of both being Muslim. And they took it upon themselves to develop a club and educate their peers and educate the faculty on Muslim phobia, and really making a difference in the high school level. And I could never have been more proud of our community than on that day. I think it was fabulous. So like I said, if you haven't ever been, go. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. And also on that same night, I had the League of California Cities East Bay Division meeting where we did a lot of planning for the future year. And I was elected president of the division, so I'll be sworn in, I guess, at the League of California Cities meeting next week. And that's all I have to report. There we go.
Okay. By the way, since you mentioned LOCC, I will not be at the meeting, so if you would be so kind as to be our voting delegate, greatly appreciate that.
I would be happy to.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. It's Manufacturing Day here in Livermore, so I need to be here to represent the city for that. So thank you for covering. We haven't had a report out for a long time, so just to get caught up real quick. September 1st, attended the East Bay Economic Development Alliance Legislative and Advocacy Committee, and also the Land Use and Infrastructure Committee regarding some of the upcoming ballot issues, and we made recommendations for that. On the same date, we dedicated the Wine Country mural dedication at the San Francisco Premium Outlets. It's a very cool mural at the outlets, so certainly take that one in. September 8th, at the Local Agency Information Commission, we voted to approve the sphere of influence modifications in Oakland and Fremont, and also worked on the expedited consideration of the municipal service reviews for the Eden Township Healthcare District, and later next month we're going to be having 3 public workshops on that. Attended the 9/11 memorials at Las Positas College, and also Fire Station Number 1 on September 8th and September 11th. September 12th, the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the I-580 committee meeting. We had the update on the operations of the HOV and express lanes. And the Planning and Policy Legislative Committee, we had an updated scope and schedule of the Congestion Management Program and the Safe Routes to School program. Also, the August cap and trade auction. There's been all kinds of talk about what we're going to be doing with all the money coming in on that. It was expected to bring in $1 billion, and actually the cap and trade auction brought in 18 million. 18 million instead of 1 billion. So if we're looking to run around spending those dollars, don't get too excited. There were concerns expressed over Prop 53, which would require voter approval for any project that requires the state to issue over $2 billion in bonds, and there were concerns about how that would impact local projects. September 22nd, the Alameda County Transportation Commission legislative update and request to have the student-free bus pass program and Safe Route to School programs come back for clarification on proposed program changes. That, along with the LOCC, is what I've got. So with that, no further business. I would close the meeting to the next meeting, October 10th, here at the Council Chambers. Thank you very much.
Mayor Marchand?
Yes.
We're hoping to adjourn into a closed session.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It didn't say that on my little chart here. So, okay, we're adjourning into closed session, and then we will be back.
Thank you.